set, thanks. I think we're all set. My download isn't working. Good evening. I'm now opening the February 7th, 2024 school committee meeting. Item 1.1, District Vision. The Barnstable Schools educates the whole child by creating a student-centered school culture that addresses students' physical, social, emotional, and academic needs by creating a safe and healthy learning environment in which students are challenged, supported, and engaged. Core values. In Barnstable Public Schools, we value commitment, collaboration, and community. Commitment. We are dedicated to the continuous learning and growth for all. Collaboration. We work together while keeping student needs at the forefront, at the center of all decision-making. Community. We build strong, respectful partnerships that support student success. Item 1.2. Statement by the chair, video or audio recording of meeting. This school committee meeting is being recorded and broadcasted on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, to make their presence known. Moment of silence. I would like to take a moment of silence for a student in our 5th grade school who recently passed. Just getting this. Our hearts and thoughts and prayers go out to David's family. Thank you. Item 2.1, Hope Squad at Barnstable High School. Who is that? You.
At this time, we'll welcome up our Hope Squad in its first year. We have some advisors here with us, as well as some students who are here to share a little bit more about their mission. The stipends for this position came before the school committee going into this school year, and so now they've had some training and are beginning their work. So we invite them up, introduce themselves, and share a little bit about what they're doing.
Hi, my name is Philippe. I'm a senior at Barnstable High School and first-year member of Hope Squad.
Hi, my name is Tiffany. I'm a first-year member of Hope Squad, and I'm a junior.
I'm Paloma. I'm a first-year member of Hope Squad, and I'm a junior as well.
Hello, Alberto Garcia. I'm the bilingual guidance counselor at Barnstable High School and first-year member of Hope Squad.
Ross Jacola, advisor for Hope Squad.
Doc, advisor for Hope Squad, and Ross loves talking in public, so that was really good. So I'll just give you like a little spiel about the Hope Squad, and I'm going to let the kids get on with it because it's their program. But this came about this time last year, I think, with Mary Beth. We kind of discussed about mental health issues within the community and in the schools. So there was a national movement called the Hope Squad. I'm going to butcher how many places it's in, so but it's a lot. But we're one of 7 schools, I believe. That's probably wrong as well. But on the Cape that have implemented this. Falmouth are in their 2nd year. We're just starting it. So what we've been doing, it's a peer-driven suicide prevention program where statistically, I think it's 7 out of 10 times more likely students who are suffering from mental health issues are going to report it to the friends. So the idea is that we then as advisors, educate them, the students, on how to kind of spot signs of suicide, and then a correct referral process so they don't become the counsellor, but just kind of the person that's connecting those at-risk students to services. So we selected some advisors, good representation of the school, lots of different demographics. Like Ross is obviously a football coach. You've got Albert from counselling. We have Amy Butterfield, who's fashion design, Meg Fligg, who's child development, Newton Jordil, one of the parent liaisons, and oh yeah, me. So yeah, so it's I was counting on my hands and I couldn't figure it out. So we went through, we selected the advisors, we went through some training, and then there was a student nomination process. So the beauty of this is the kids nominate the kids. So so it's people who are trusted in their friend groups. So our advisor team, our student advisor team, it's really it's a real resemblance of our student body and demographic. So without further ado, I'm going to put Tiffany on the spot. 'Cause, yeah, let's go. So yeah.
So we've been meeting with each other and having like talks of team bonding, and then seeing how we can make Hope Squad known to other students so they can feel comfortable to come to us and talk about things that they're going through, and how to make like events for it to make it known as well.
And also with the initiation of Hope Squad, we also had to get the proper training. So we met on a couple weeks ago during school so we could get all the Hope Squad members just all together. And we just got QPR certified, which is just this program. Basically, it's an acronym for question, persuade, and refer. So it just teaches us the proper ways of going about like how to communicate with one, like who is thinking about suicide, and just how to properly navigate that process, because it is a very difficult one. And also we are like all repping the Hope Squad merch, yes. And we got bracelets, shirts, sweatshirts, pins, and yeah, we're organizing like a Hope Week next week. So every day that week we're gonna be doing something different. So one day we'll be wearing blue and purple, or teal and purple, which are the suicide prevention colors. And just a bunch of cool things like introducing ourselves to new people in one day, and just to really like spread the word out who are our Hope Squad members, and just to show some familiar faces and show who you can trust at our school in our program.
The point of this Spirit Week is really to just make our presence known further in Barnstable High School, since it's our first year. So people do know that Hope Squad is a thing based on like flyers we have around, but we really want to make it known that we are available at all times. You can talk to us, and not only that, but also raise awareness for suicide at the same time. So kind of like killing two birds in one stone. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I just ask, do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so a couple questions. So first of all, you kind of said how many advisors and like that, how many kids are in the first? I remember when you came into the original presentation, but that was a while ago, and I kind of forgot how many kids you were thinking.
So right now we have 30 students, and it's
30 students that are involved in.
Yeah,
Okay.
30 students,
Wow.
really resemblant of our demographic, multiple languages. And then we're hoping to add a few more, probably, just because of the number of students, and then we're kind of trying to make it a team thing. So we're hoping to add about 5 to 10 more.
Okay, and one other question is so is it kind of like for the kids, for the students, or even for you folks, is it kind of a word of mouth, or like does it like you can go to this room or this office at a certain time, or is it like seeing one of the kids at lunch? Like how would a student get in touch, I guess would be my question.
So the advisors wear shirts making the fact that they are advisors known. So if you want to talk to an advisor, they all have different rooms that you can go to. And like that's why we have so many. Like maybe a student who plays football might not feel comfortable going to like the fashion advisor. So it just depends on who you're most comfortable with. If you want to talk to an advisor, like they are known and you can go to their room. And if you feel more comfortable talking to a student, our presence is also known, so you can talk to us. And depending on what the student wants, if they want to talk to an advisor alone, then we take them there. If they want to talk to an advisor with us, we go with them. And if they don't want to talk to an advisor at all, we are responsible for informing an advisor of like what's going on. So that's kind of how it works. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Jen?
you three students seem to be great spokespersons for this program. The adults as well, but the kids, to me, you've already made me feel comfortable. So it's just your presence alone. I don't know whether you have a gift or not, but I know what you're out there to do, and I think you're succeeding. Congratulations to you guys.
Jen?
Yes, what a great program. Thank you for your leadership on this. It's really important. I wonder if, well, I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm a fossil, so don't listen to anything I have to say, but, you know, there's all this snapping and all this other stuff going on. Do you guys have an anonymous way where kids can get in touch with you so they can be like, you know, in the cafeteria suffering and then just snap you and you'll know?
Yeah, we also have like this program we've talked about at our school for like the past couple of years. It's just the Say Something app. So you either download it on like a phone or look at it up on a website, and you could basically report anything you see. And we will also be using this app if the person wants to like stay anonymous or something, we could like get them the help they want.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's great.
yeah.
I love it. I love that you care about your fellow students, and it's a real big step into what it's like to care for your community, which is what we do volunteering, right? But I also wanted to mention, I don't know if you guys or if anyone's on the youth commission at all in town, but if you're interested, they do a lot of really cool events. They do, the drug prevention seminar. And I could hook you up with George Noonan, or you guys could look for youth commission members, because I think your presence there would dovetail really nicely. And then I also, I don't really know what do you call them? The student representatives that aren't youth commission, they're not, what are they called? You know, the kids who report to. Student council? Yeah, student council. Yes. See, I'm totally like imprinted, like those wild animals. Like I've just been imprinted with town council stuff. Maybe student council could, do something with it too. But I'd love to see you on Main Street during, the things that the Hyannis Civic Association does, the open streets thing. Like I think it's, now that we're trying to take the stigma away from this stuff, it's really important. And, we've lost, in the last few years, we've lost a handful of really great kids to that. So thanks so much for doing that. That's awesome.
Andre?
Yeah, for me, Jen, you talk about taking the stigma away from mental health. I see a diverse group of both educators and students, but when I see Coach Ross Jacola here as a part of the Hope Squad, I think to myself about family, which is the banner for the football program, which was very successful and is going to continue to be very successful. And family, I saw that means forget about me, I love you. And that perspective that you're not alone when it comes to mental health, I think is very important. I'm somebody that's into sports, and involved in education. When you have people like Giannis Antetokounmpo, NBA champion and MVP, opening up saying, I have mental health issues that I need to work through and process in order to do what I do. And he's somebody that's at the pinnacle of his profession. It's just very important for people to recognize this affects every strata of our society. And you're not alone in that. And we have a visible, dynamic group at Barnstable High School for people to connect with. It's just, I'm very pleased with this, just in terms of the work that you're doing. And then for those students that are out there that are silently and quietly suffering, for them to get the resources and support that they need. So great job, and keep up the good work.
So I also want to congratulate you on your success and how broadly that group has expanded, a lot of people involved. I was going to wait until the school committee comments, but this one, I want to bring up Logan Hurwitz, who was recently spotlighted by the Channel 5's High Five video. I had meant to send it to Andre to include, hoping to include, but she was recognized for leading with kindness and for her work on the Hope Squad, and I think that brought a great deal of pride in me, at least, about our Barnstable community. And it also spotlighted how she's working to help with the scholarship to keep Nick Eastman's memory alive, too. So it's great work. I appreciate what you do, and I think it's helping our community a lot. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so starting with our routine business, the student envoy reports.
Hi.
Hi.
So for our monthly sports recap, 3 of our teams have made it to tournament: boys basketball, girls hockey, and boys hockey. And then girls basketball still has a chance to win. So the support in all of these games have been amazing. You can really see the student body showing up for their teams, and I think it's really helping with morale.
Over the past 2 weeks, I'd say, students have been choosing their schedules for the upcoming year, and that's been going really well. But like something that has come up is like our lack of study halls. Like we can't take a study hall for a class, and I feel like that would, if we were able to do that, that would be greatly beneficial to like students as like juniors and seniors who are taking like AP classes, applying to college, and it would take a lot of it would take a lot of stress off. It would like improve sleep schedules. So I feel like that should be something that's considered in upcoming years.
And then just our final thing, FPS is having their qualifying problem, so you might want to come. Yeah,
That's Friday.
that's Friday, this half day. We should start around 7 something because the school day ends at 10:15 and we need to be done by 10. So my team will probably start around like 7:50, as
Yeah.
late as we can. Yeah,
Yes. That's
pretty much it.
Yeah.
Everything's going really well.
It's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just chime in?
Sure.
Just related to the schedule, I think there's maybe a communication piece that I can follow up with the administrators on, but the teachers and administrators have been working on a schedule for next year that does build in a little bit of work time during classes. There's something called TST, Teacher Support Time, where students will be in class, but given some additional time with the purpose of kind of focusing on extra help, and it's designed above and beyond sort of your typical instruction time. And then Hawk time, which will coincide with advisory, will also build in a little bit of, I think, what you're looking for.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Anybody have anything? Okay, thank you.
So sorry. I saw you roughing the basketball game. It was great. Thank you. Have a great night.
Hey, good to hear. Sometimes they run you out of the building, but it was a good win for the home team, and so I was able to survive.
No bad calls? Wow.
1 or 2, Peter, but...
All right. Item 3.2, approve school committee meeting minutes of January 10, 2024.
Move to approve school committee meeting minutes of January 10th, 2024.
I'll second.
Having a motion and seconded, this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 3.3, public comment. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and 30 minutes total. There will be no debate or action taken on public comment. The committee will take items under advisement, or the individual will request an item to be placed on a future agenda. The chair will also allow public comment at his or her discretion during the meeting. Is anybody here for public comment? Nope, seeing nobody, public comment is closed. Item 3.4, school committee comments and subcommittee liaison reports. Jen.
Yes, I wanted to reflect on actually just going back to the election. I've had a little bit of time now to sit up here and a little bit of time to look at some issues, and I went back today and looked and noticed that 4,206 people voted for me to be up here, which was more than anybody else on the board. And I think they did that because they know who I am and how I act and what I believe and how I'm not afraid to speak my mind. So I'm going to go with that because I've been wrestling with some stuff since Friday that's really bothered me. I went on a tour of BHS on Friday, and 40 staff members were absent. My son was in study hall for 3 hours in the cafeteria. The tenor of the building was not up to par, not what I would expect it to be. I have grave concerns about this. I have grave concerns about what's going on in the high school, especially juxtaposed next to BIS, where we walked in and everything seemed to be according to plan. There was a plan. There was good morale. There were no phones out. The students were studying for MCAS because that was the point. It was under control. I wished it had been that way when my son was there. But I will tell you right now that if I had gone on a tour of Barnstable High School 3 years ago, my son would not be there. And I know I'm not alone in saying that because we could just ask the school resource officers or half the teachers why their kids don't go there. And I just want to be really honest about why I was elected. And it's to tell people the truth. And the truth is that this board has the power to change that. And we must. It is not okay what's going on there. It's not okay that 2 months ago, longer than that, it was probably 6 months ago, I started complaining about the bathrooms. And I was a town councilor at the time. And the bathrooms, I will say, on Friday were very clean. And I was thankful to be able to shake the hand of the guy who did that. But when that gets to a town councilor to be rectified, I think we have a real communication issue here. There's a leadership issue and a communication problem there. About commitment and volunteering. That's what this job is, right? Commitment and volunteering. We all agree that we're here for the kids. You know, we're not getting a paycheck. So I'm going to ask everybody to dig deep and start thinking about ways that we can really make a difference up here. Here's an example. Facilities subcommittee. I want to meet every week until we get something done. I don't want to meet every 4 weeks and fart around. That's not what I'm here to do. If we're going to make change, let's make change positively. I've been stewing since Friday about all this, so I'm sorry if I come out a little intense. But leadership is really important to me, and leadership is not note-taking. Leadership is not hiding in an office. Leadership is not chasing people around asking for hall passes. Leadership is creating an environment in which people can grow and become themselves in a healthy way. It's understanding that there has to be capital involved to make locker rooms a place where kids can be proud to play a sport at your school. I don't know what to say about the locker rooms. We have got to get on this, people. I'm serious. You know, Andre reaches out and always talks about, you know, the mascot. I'm telling you, it's bigger than the mascot. It's bigger than the mascot. The mascot is a symbol. But what people feel when they walk in a building matters. My kid would not be there today if I knew that that was what it was like. And I say that as a member of, you know, why did I run? I ran to make a difference. This board has the power to make a difference. And if we sit here and we say, look at this great initiative from these awesome kids, wow, that's just awesome, but we don't do what's required of us to make the framework so that all kids can succeed, we are failing at our volunteer job. And it really upsets me. I have been losing sleep over this. My son said to me today, Mom, you've been upset for like 4 days. If this board really upsets you that much, then why don't you just quit? I said, well, because we don't quit. I don't quit. And I'm not going to quit because the kids next to me need a public education. It's not acceptable what's happening in the high school. I don't know. 4,206 people voted me into this position. And I'm not going to be quiet about it. I'm going to be critical when I need to be critical about it. It's not personal. We have a job to do, and I want to do it. I don't want to hear what I can't do. If it requires policy change, let's do it. If someone needs to be blamed, blame me. I don't care. I have a lot of friends. I am not looking for friends. I don't need to be friends with teachers. I don't need to be friends with students. I don't need to be friends with anybody. But what I do need to do is make a change where a change matters. And if we're not leaning in, we're leaning back. And that's what losers do. We have a AAA bond rating in this town. We are aces on the municipal side. That high school is in trouble, and it's incumbent upon us to save it. And I'm not going to stop until we've done that. It's too late for my kid, I'm sure of it, because he's a sophomore. But I'll do it for the kids next door. So I hope I have a commitment from every one of you about that. And if you haven't gone to the high school, you should go and check it out. It's unacceptable. Thank you.
I would just say we have 9 buildings, and I would hope that we would all go to all of our buildings. It's not just about the high school. We have 8 other buildings besides the high school, and I've always been fighting on this board for all of the schools and not just the high school. There seems to be a lot of highlighting of the high school always, and the superintendent will know this, and anybody on the board will know this, that I fight for all 9 schools, not just the high school kids, but the kids that are in preschool, the kids that are in kindergarten, the kids that are in 5th grade, all the kids. So I would suggest that we go to all of our buildings and take a critical look at all of our buildings.
And I'll say that everyone, I asked for tours of all the buildings, and Sarah was kind enough to oblige. And Kathy and I went to BIS and BHS, and we have tours set up at the others. If you haven't been to all the schools,
Yeah, I agree.
go to all the schools and see.
Since the beginning of the year, I've been to all schools. I
We
go
are
every year.
closing schools and opening, classrooms that are like in trailers. I really need to get my head around what is going on. But I'm telling you right now, the tenor in the high school is not good.
And I can tell you, having gone to all 9 buildings, it's not just the high school. That's what I'm saying.
Then we have more work to do than I thought.
Yep.
So we got to meet more than once every 4 weeks for our facility subcommittee, Mike. We got
Well,
to meet more than that.
that's a decision that will be made. I'll make that decision with the superintendent.
Let's make it.
You left the last meeting early.
Well,
and-
I have a job, so
Well,
it was an hour long.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. So at the end of the meeting, we made a decision that was it was either going to be before or after, and the people that were present made the decision to make it that date.
Well,
The meeting was an hour long. We stayed for the hour and we set the meeting up. I don't know. Now you're saying that it should be done every week. I don't know what to tell you. We made at the end of that meeting. I didn't do it on my own. At the end of that meeting, there was a decision among the people that were still there when to make the meeting.
Right.
That's what we did.
And I'm saying that if we plan on getting anything done, we need to meet more regularly than once a month. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
The 29th, I believe. Yes. So I'll jump into the facilities report. Our facilities subcommittee, we met, we talked about, we looked at the report. The consultant came, we kind of went through the report. And then we talked about kind of where we're at now with personnel. We had a long conversation for the rest of the meeting about personnel and who we have and what, not people's names, but what we have for like plumbers and contractors and electricians, HVAC, kind of all the different positions within facilities. We had a conversation about how we could improve it because we have a real problem along with the town, talking to the folks about the town, getting the tradespeople. So we were talking about other ideas about what we could do about that. So that was kind of that whole meeting. So that's kind of where it got left off. And our next meeting is February 29th, I believe, at 8 a.m. So it's open to the public. Anybody can come. And it's usually about, I'm assuming we're going to be about an hour, probably an hour to an hour and a half. Kind of when we get done talking about what's on the agenda is when we'll move on to when our next meeting is. So anybody's more than welcome to come.
And hopefully we can include fields in that because facilities include fields. Thank you.
I will take that under advisement for although I don't know, but for me, I think a good starting point for me, if we're going to bring this up about fields, to me, I'm more concerned about our buildings conditions. Fields, I've always been fighting for the 4-5 building. That field has been disastrous forever. But I'm also more concerned about our facilities within our buildings, our heating systems, our electrical, our plumbing, just the quality, the painting, all of our, for me personally, buildings come before the fields. But we will be having a conversation about that. We'll I'll take that as an advisement for the next subcommittee.
Peter, do you have anything?
No, I think Jen brought up some good points. You're right, it was a little intense. It's certainly, I've certainly voiced my concerns as well. So, and I get it, Mike. We go to a ton of buildings. It's just the biggest, and it seems to be more glaring, I guess. And to point that out, I guess. So, that's it. Thank you.
So, Andre, do you have anything besides your regular presentation?
I do.
Okay.
Just in terms of some comments for the community. I was not able to be here for the January meeting because I was visiting family in Arizona that really paved the way for me. And so that's why I was absent at that meeting. Nonetheless, I have spoken to our name and mascot here in Barnstable Public Schools, and I simply want to clarify what I've said via social media. So the objective of a school's name and mascot is to signify something the community values, feels represented by, and brings a sense of unity. A district's name and mascot must be respectful, culturally proficient, and inspiring. I'm well aware of the decision that was made in 2020 concerning this town's name and mascot, and I respect that decision. At the same time, the critical elements of unity and anti-racism for which this decision was made remain for many unresolved. Therefore, I have highlighted the issue and requested that this committee look into that. Now, I am well aware of the process by which items are discussed on this committee, going through the chair, and I respect that process. To Jen's point, this district has many needs, and a number of staff members have reached out to me in terms of their comments and their perspectives. I recognize that. We have to take care of our personnel. We have to take care of our capital improvement projects. And of course, at the end of the day, we are a school district, and so it's about the students first. The name and mascot does not usurp any of these priorities. But it's something I think and feel strongly that we could review at a given time. To conclude, Jen, staff members also reached out to me in terms of facilities. As I understand it, we have $30 million plus in capital improvement projects that are ranked at different levels. And I know that that's something that we are examining. It's a high priority. And I concur with Jen and Mike that are on the facility subcommittee. We're paid volunteers. And so sign me up. And people continue to reach out to me in terms of the work that we can do to hopefully speed up some of these projects. But, for the community's sake, everyone doesn't go to some of our special committee meetings. We have over $30 million in capital improvement projects, and we are working to get them done as expeditiously as possible.
All right, so I have a couple routine items. Subcommittee on Policy Revision. At the January 12th subcommittee meeting, we reviewed several policies but decided there were no changes. Those included policy IKF, graduation requirements, policy IHBH, the alternative learning programs, and yes, those two had no changes at this time. We also reviewed policy BEDH, public comment at school committee meetings, and policy BEDHE, and we noted one discrepancy. Therefore, we have a revision that will appear later on tonight's agenda. A couple other policies are on the agenda later tonight, and so we'll highlight those when we get to them. The next meeting of the subcommittee policy is this Friday, February 9th, and we will continue to review the MASC updates, and we're also taking a look at the technology policies. The subcommittee for the midterm evaluation of the school attorney, Peter and I are on that subcommittee. We met with the school attorney and the superintendent on January 29th, received some evidence as she works towards her annual goals, and the next meeting of the subcommittee will be February 16th at 1 p.m. I have two other items. I did attend the BHS showcase on January 11th, and at the high school, walked through, and it was wonderful to see the staff very upbeat, engaged. Some of our students were there, also very engaged. We had some interactive presentations that were fun and somewhat humbling for some of us who didn't get the correct answers. But it was great, and I enjoyed seeing the staff there, and I know that it takes away from their families, but nobody would have thought that they were missing anything, and that all they wanted to do was be at BHS was wonderful. I felt very welcome. I already talked about Logan Hurwitz, who is a senior, and then the last item, Barnstable High School's DECA Club, which is huge. About 50 students participated in the district competition that was earlier this month, I think January 4th and 5th, and it was held locally. I wish that I could have gotten down there to see some of them in action. What I did find out with the follow-up is that they participated with a lot of the events, and the community members were there to provide feedback as volunteers. The competition with the other schools was welcomed, and our students performed exceptionally well. There is a large group. I couldn't get a number prior to, it might be on my email, so I'll check it later, but I didn't have the definitive number, but I know there's a large group of students that are headed to Boston March 7th to 9th. For the regional competition, or the state. That was the state. And that the feeling that I heard from some of the community volunteers, and then some of the staff, indicated that they felt that we have a really good chance of some of our students making it to nationals, which is in Anaheim, California. So that's great. If they need a chaperone, I could go out and help out, give a first-hand report next time. But a big shout out to the DECA Club and to the faculty that are working with them. It isn't just the named advisors, but that whole group of teachers in the business pathways works really hard to help prepare them. And that's it for me. Andre, do you have a short video?
I do, Kathy, and it includes some of what the community has seen, which I don't mind going over once again. Because, of course, Barnstable is a large, it's a diverse, and it's a dynamic school district, and every month there are many exciting and uplifting activities that are taking place. So the BHS basketball team visited Hyannis West Elementary. These athletes work in multiple capacities with students, whether in playing math games, reading a book, providing movement breaks, which are very important for our young students, or even being a positive face to look up to. That there is Evan Briggs. He will smile on occasion, but he's having a good time. Evan is many times very focused. The BHS girls hockey varsity student athletes took some time before practice to visit some of our elementary students and participate with them as well. Mr. Corwan's, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, interest pathway group presented their living zoo last week, and this took place at Barnstable West Barnstable Elementary Interest Pathway Group. This was the Living Zoo. I got a chance to participate at BCIS. The third grade PBL showcase took place. The focus of the project-based learning showcase was reducing food waste, which we talked about here, litter in the oceans, and recycling. Students presented their messages with public service announcements. We were fortunate enough to have Jenny Wheeler, as a guest speaker, who does great work at the Family Table Collaborative. Moving over to BUES, 4th and 5th graders participated in their winter concert recently. Great job by all of our student musicians. We had presentations by the chorus, the orchestra, and also the band taking place. Great job by the BUES for the 5th graders for their winter concert. Moving over to the intermediate school, the Terrapin PBL project took place. We want to thank Natural Resource Officer Anne Marie Lapino for helping to kickstart our Terrapin project-based learning project. Students were excited to learn about turtles and in their habitat. Here in Barnstable, students also raised their hand and named Tortuga, again, Spanish not my first language, which they will release into the marshes at Sandy Neck in the spring. This took place at BIS. Staying at BIS, we had the geography beat. After a morning of intense competition, Abner Nascimento of Team Long was named the 2024 BIS Geography Beat champion. Anuj Sigdel of Team Centerville was the second place finisher. Congratulations to our winner and our runner-up. We commend all of the participants, and I'm thrilled that we have activities like this, Geography Bee, and it would be great to see some spelling bees, as that's quite, the National Spelling Bee Contest is tremendous, and so these bees are just wonderful. Local community members, we're still at BIS, took time out of their day to come speak to our 6th grade students who are writing children's books, about their local issues. Our speakers came in during lunch period to talk to students about some specific issues. Students enjoyed hearing from them and input and suggestions they received from their books. I want to thank Ashley Fisher, who's the Director of Natural Resources at the Mashpee Department of Natural Resources, Susan Johnson, Executive Director of the Cape Cod Needy Fund, and also Jack Banagas, who's a STEM educator and resource developer for the New England Wildlife Center, and also James Morton, who is a board member from the Cape Cod Foundation. Excuse me, didn't want to skip ahead too quickly. Okay, this is now a collaboration between our BIS students and also our Barnstable High School students. This was a writing conference that took place. BIS 6th grade students came to the high school at the media library to pair up with Barnstable High School students and get near-peer writing feedback and mentorship on their courage essays. All right, when you're doing writing, particularly long-form writing, again, the collaboration is outstanding. I see Mr. Hurley, who's going to be taking students to Washington, D.C. This is the writing conferences. And we just had the Hope Squad here as part of a regional effort to raise awareness and prevent death by suicide. BCS has joined several other schools to implement the nationally acclaimed peer-to-peer suicide prevention program that we just saw called Hope Squad. So this is the work that they're doing at the high school, and they just gave a tremendous presentation. Kathy, you spoke to this. Barnstable sent 70 students to compete in this year's district DECA event. They had a fantastic time, testing their confidence, knowledge, and problem-solving abilities while competing against 600 plus other students. We had dance night and karaoke. I'm a huge fan personally of karaoke. The students will outdo me there. Many other students from southeastern Massachusetts. 35 are moving on to the state competition, as you said, Kathy, and looking to move on to hopefully the national competition. Congratulations to our Barnstable High School Red Hawks DECA program. A few more items. The All Cape and Islands High School Music Festival took place at Barnstable High School. Congratulations to all of the Barnstable High School students and musicians who participated in this fabulous event. This is an all high school Cape and Islands music festival, not just for us here in Barnstable. It took place at our wonderful Performing Arts Center, and a number of these students are Barnstable High School graduates. In conclusion, moving over to athletics. Because our students are doing tremendous things in the classroom and on the different fields of competition. This is a freshman, Thomas Hardy, who won the New England Silver Gloves boxing tournament for the second straight year. He's moving on to the regional championship, covering New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. Tommy is going to move on to the National Silver Gloves tournament in Missouri. His coach and trainer is Jesse Barboza, a Barnstable High School graduate, who's also a member of People of Action. So great job, freshman Thomas Harding. There's much more to come there. We have 100 points being scored by Barnstable High School girls ice hockey captain Allie McEnany. Excuse me for the pronunciation. She's doing an amazing job. I believe our Barnstable girls hockey team qualified for the playoffs. If not, they're very close. I know the girls basketball team is very close, and they're going to get a win this Friday against the Falmouth Clippers, as will the boys. So this is Allie McEnany scoring our 100th career point. The Winter track team traveled to the Reggie Lewis Center to compete in the State Coaches Invitational on Saturday. Three school records were broken. Jahai Kilborn in the 300 meters, Daniel Sanderson also in the 300 meters, Jackson Merrill, who's going on to Division I competition at Stonehill College. He ran a personal best in the 1 mile. Harry Ells in the shot put. Chloe Dibb broke her school record in the 1,000 meters, and Lily Deco finished 8th in the 2 mile. And our girls 4x800 relay broke their school record and finished in 5th. Outstanding from our winter track participants. 2 more. It was senior night for the wrestling team. Tough, close loss against Bridgewater Raynham, but senior night for all of our wrestlers who are concluding their season and doing outstanding work. I love to see those banners behind them. And in conclusion, our boys basketball team on Friday defeated Nauset High School and qualified for the state tournament. They are returning to the state tournament. You can see the tall gentleman on the far left in the back. That's Coach Scott DuPont, who is our JV coach. Our JV team is currently undefeated presently and playing very good basketball. And our DY boys, our basketball team last night traveled to DY in front of a packed house, delivered a resounding double-digit victory, and it was a great win and a great atmosphere with the two towns coming together. And so it was been great to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. The next item is superintendent's report. Sarah?
Great, thank you. I've got a few things for the committee and the community this evening. To elaborate on our future problem solvers, I want to also share that our Barnstable Intermediate School future problem solvers will be competing tomorrow, February 8th, in the Massachusetts FPS qualifying problem for the first time. And then on Friday, as you heard from Paloma, the BHS future problem solvers will be competing. For the community, this qualifying problem will determine, which teams statewide will move on to the prestigious international competition. The results of the qualifying problem will send top performing teams throughout Massachusetts to the State Bowl at Clark University in Worcester in March. The topic for this year is Antarctica. And I won't read the entire question or frame, but it is about how Antarctica can be sustainably utilized yet simultaneously preserved to benefit our global population. the BIS and BHS Future Problem Solvers teams, who I happened to see in a visit at BIS on one of my school visits. I did pop in and see them hard at work with Coach Deb Contrino. They've been working for months, and we wish them the best. I will follow this up with an formal invite, an email to the school committee, but you will be invited to a special ribbon cutting ceremony of the official grand opening of the Red Hawks Food Pantry at Barnstable High School on Monday. This event is sponsored by Stop and Shop, who provided the initial funding of $35,000 to support the development of the pantry. We will also be joined in this event by community partners, including Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance, Capabilities, and Chatham Harvesters Cooperative, which were curated by the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. Special thanks to Director of Food Services Dave Badeau and Family and Community Engagement Center Coordinator Maura Bunshu for spearheading this project under Mary Beth Taylor's leadership. We are currently serving over 70 BPS families with the capacity to serve additional families who are struggling with food insecurity. I want to share with the committee just some of my reflections, having attended the workshop related to the opioid epidemic that the town hosted last week. We have participated in a task force. Executive Director of Social Emotional Learning and Student Services, Mary Beth Taylor, has been serving as the school district liaison to the town's task force that is working to identify ways to spend opioid settlement money that has been received by the town. The task force hosted a workshop for community members last week that was very well attended. Participants had dinner served in the junior-senior cafeteria, after which there were facilitated roundtable discussions about the impact of the opioid epidemic on them personally and on the community. And I personally feel so honored to have been able to participate and listen to the vulnerability and courage and strength that so many displayed in leaning in and helping to solve this problem. People shared their perspectives on the best way to spend funds, identifying the current gaps in support and best areas of opportunities based on their experience. It was truly a very powerful night. And lastly, just wanted to preview for the committee and the community that the Town of Barnstable's Citizens Academy is running again this year. And the school department, we will be presenting on the night of March 5th, so that is before our next committee meeting. We will share educational highlights, budget information, facilities needs, and other relevant information for the Town of Barnstable's citizens, presenting to roughly 20 to 25 engaged community members and educating them about our schools. Lastly, February break is coming up, and want to wish everyone a healthy and peaceful break, February 19th to 23rd.
Any school committee comments? No. Hearing none. Assistant Superintendent Report, item 3.6.
Thank you. So a reminder to our families that February 9th is a half day for students. Staff will be participating in professional development for the second half of the day. Our K-5 staff will largely be participating in the third installment of professional development related to the GLEAM grant, high leverage strategies in elementary literacy instruction. Our secondary educators will be working on department-focused PD. And we'll also be holding our second new educator luncheon, this one hosting our pre-K to 3 staff. We held a luncheon for our new high school educators in November, and we'll have our final luncheon for our new grade 4 through 7 staff during the April half day. And this has just been another way for us to check in and stay connected with our new educators. It's really been great to see them in, a relaxed setting as well. It's just another opportunity, to get people to share and connect. So it's been really nice. Congratulations to Jason Wilby and Elijah Greenberg for earning top honors in the final round of Poetry Out Loud at the high school. And while Jason Wilby was crowned the winner of the event, due to some scheduling conflicts, the close runner-up, Elijah Greenberg, will be representing BHS at the regional round at the Cultural Center on Sunday, March 3rd at 1 p.m. So we wish Elijah the best of luck. Andre spoke of the geography bee. One piece of information that I did not realize, and I think it's really important to note, I just really want to acknowledge Andrew Vince, who's the History Social Sciences Curriculum Coordinator, and the BIS Social Studies Department for their commitment to this event. There used to be a state and national level competitions organized by the National Geographic Society. Those were discontinued during COVID. And the society decided not to bring them back. And so even though this was discontinued, the department felt that it was just such a positive event for students that they've kept at the team level and school-wide geography bees going. And so I just want to thank them for that because it is such a community event for that school. And they've just gone beyond and said, you know, it doesn't matter that it's not the big deal. They want to keep doing it just for the community sense. And finally, Barnstable High School has earned the College Board's AP Computer Science Female Diversity Award for expanding young women's access to AP Computer Science A. Schools receiving the AP Computer Science Female Diversity Award have achieved either 50% or higher female exam taker representation in one of or both AP Computer Science courses, or a percentage of female computer science exam takers that meets or exceeds that of the school's female population. In short, we have a really strong female representation in our fairly young computer science program. Barnstable High School is one of only 225 schools to be recognized for achieving this important result in AP Computer Science. The honor recognizes the outstanding work that Barnstable High School is doing to engage more female students in computer science. And just, I think we all know, but studying computer science can open doors for students, giving them tools to excel, setting them up for high-paying careers. But girls have largely been left behind in this field for far too long, which is why the College Board is honoring schools for expanding young women's access to AP Computer Science classes and the important steps they're taking to improve gender representation. Research has shown that female students who take AP Computer Science are more likely to major in computer science in college compared with matched peers. So congratulations to Barnstable High School and computer science teachers Sharon Nelson and Marlo George for helping to prepare our female students for the in-demand jobs of the future and giving them the opportunity to help solve some of society's most challenging problems.
Questions or comments?
Kristen, I'm glad you mentioned that geography. I didn't know it ended.
I know.
During COVID, and I think it's terrific that BIS is continuing. So, my hats off certainly to the staff there, to the social studies department, to Andrew Vince. I've had grandkids go through that, and it's a wonderful community event. And I'm glad it's continuing. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Kristen. Item 4, old business. 4.1, approved field trip to Vermont on April 9 through 12, 2024 for Barnstable High School Visioning Team student representatives. Sarah?
Thank you. So in your packet is a field trip request. This involves 4 students and 8 chaperones. I am planning on being one of the chaperones. The group is part of the BAR Meeting the Moment Visioning team for the high school. And the trip is kind of a regional one. We did have a group that went to California and Arizona last week or the week prior. This is to go more regionally up to Vermont for 4 days to visit model schools. There's one there that has a lot around pathways and personalized learning, another one involving elevating student voice. We anticipate traveling by a rented vehicle, limo, like coach bus, not coach bus because there's 12 of us, but like a small bus, and the insurance certificate is included in there. But Jane and Dave Anthony have also approved an alternative, which would be renting a couple minivans and having drivers drive up. And so we're asking for your support. It is grant funded, so all costs are paid through a grant.
Questions or comments? No?
Move to approve field trip request to Vermont on April 9th through 12th, 2024 for Barnstable High School Visioning Team Student Representatives as presented in tonight's material.
I'll second.
Having a motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Item 4.2, acceptance of the revised Barnstable High School Program of Studies for 2024 to 2025.
Thank you.
Sarah.
So at the last meeting, the committee approved the Barnstable High School Program of Studies, and we appreciated that. We wanted to get it approved at that time so that we could begin the course selection process, which takes many weeks. We did want to bring it back, however, to add some language that I think would be helpful to our guidance counselors related to expectations in the school regarding students being fully scheduled. So there is the possibility when students enter the senior year that they have 21 of 22 credits that they need. And we just wanted to set the expectation that students need to be fully scheduled throughout all of their time at Barnstable High School. That scheduling, that fully scheduled, might look a little different depending upon a student in the ACE program after school, for example, compared to dual enrollment, compared to the day program. But we just wanted to create a little bit more language to support our guidance department and set those expectations. So on page 6, a sentence has been added that students are expected to be fully scheduled in all years unless there's some exception made by principal or designee. There are certainly circumstances for students where we may approve them to be on a reduced day, but that would be the exception and not sort of an allowable norm. So that's what's coming for you tonight. We did talk about it as part of the policy subcommittee as it relates to graduation requirement policy, and ask for your acceptance of this revision.
Questions or comments? All right.
Move to accept the revised Barnstable High School Program of Studies for 2024-2025 as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
Having a motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Item 4.3, approve the 2024-2025 school committee meeting schedule. Sarah? I think this is the same. I don't believe there were any changes.
No changes.
And you got no feedback? All right.
There are no changes from last time.
Move to approve the 2024-2025 school committee meeting schedule as presented in tonight's materials.
I'll second.
Having a motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, motion carries unanimously. All right, new business. Item 5.1, Glean update. Welcome, Carrie Morse.
As Carrie comes forward, I'll just set the stage here. GLEAM is the big literacy project that's happening K-5, and it stands for Growing Literacy Equity Across Massachusetts. Carrie recently presented this presentation to a meeting that I attended, which was the Superintendent CPAC Task Force. But it's also been shared a lot with faculty and staff and with families, and wanted to bring it to the school committee to highlight a really important effort and initiative that we're doing in terms of growing literacy here. So I'll turn it over to you, Carrie.
Thank you. So nice to meet you. Carrie Morse, Director of Teaching and Learning Pre-K to 5, and nice seeing everyone else.
Hi, Carrie.
I'm really excited about this. We started last spring with being awarded a grant, and Sarah did a great job of keying that up for me. It's a 2.5-year grant, and it allows us to go through a process of evaluating and selecting new literacy materials that are high quality for our students in kindergarten through 5th grade. We are partnering with TNTP, which is a national nonprofit that every step of the way are working with us throughout this. And tonight I'll share with you a little bit about our timeline and also some highlights. So our timeline, we started in March last year, and from March through August, we went through what we called the systems analysis. And we looked comprehensively at our data. And what I mean by data is anywhere from the policies that we have for literacy to the information gained from educators and students and staff through focus groups or surveys or looking at achievement data in literacy to get a real foundational picture of what we had for literacy in Barnstable and where we wanted to move to improve that. In October of this year, we started a GLEAM team, specifically from August to September. We posted, and we have 20 members of our GLEAM team, which I'll show you a slide in a moment of all of the members that includes. From October until June, we will be working through evaluating, and then this May, we will be selecting a high-quality instructional material for our district. Throughout October to June, we are also going through what's called strategic advising, and that is a weekly support from TNTP. This week, actually, we have TNTP here doing walkthroughs to all of the classrooms. From July on, so that will be the last phase of our grant, we will July, we'll have our purchased materials. We will implement in September. And even though, purchasing them, that's just the starting point. It's really making sure that we utilize those materials, that we set the stage for the educators to be able to use them efficiently and effectively to support students' learning in our district. So there will be a lot of professional development for that. There's 3, now we have 4 phases. So we did the learn and prepare, and we are continuing to learn and prepare, but we are into the investigate and select right now, phase 2, which is what where we are field testing materials. Phase 3 will be where we're monitoring and scaling and implementing. And then phase 4 would be more of continuing that and providing that professional development with educators. So phase 1. There's a lot here. October, November, December, and January, GLEAM team worked together to review a lot of materials out there and to narrow it down with parameters that we felt really represented the learners in Barnstable and what we felt was needed to move our literacy vision ahead. And so we established criteria, we previewed options, and in November, we narrowed those down and then shared them with stakeholders. So the stakeholders, for example, the family members were provided information we launched a newsletter in November to families that we will continue now monthly. In addition to that, during the curriculum, Thank you. Parent conferences. During the parent conferences, we put out a table out for those that came in person with the materials. We narrowed it down to 3 programs, and we asked for feedback on those 3 programs. We had information also shared digitally to families, and surveys were collected. In addition to that, for 2 weeks, educators looked at those 3 programs to narrow down to 2 programs from that feedback. And in November and December, we started to unpack those materials and develop our field testing, or what we also would call a pilot, where we start to utilize them in the schools. In January 10th, we had our first professional development with piloting teachers. We have, I believe, 28 piloting teachers in our district from K to 5, and we narrowed it down to 2 programs. One was CKLA. It's called Amplify CKLA. It's a comprehensive program, as well as another comprehensive program called EL Education. And We are now in phase 2. Throughout February, in March, we are going to be piloting. We're 2.5 weeks in. And throughout that, we'll be conducting those walkthroughs. So as I mentioned, this week, we're getting into every one of the piloting classrooms just to get an idea of how the students are engaging, how the programs are showing up in the classrooms. And we are continuing to find out how we can support the piloting teachers to make a choice moving forward. The other piece that's very large in this is that we started to work on a vision. And the vision is our North Star that's driving our work throughout this. The vision is also informing any kind of work in terms of like our walkthroughs today. We're using that vision, and we created a tool aligned to that vision. I'll show you that in a moment. We are continuing throughout this to share. So I mentioned there are 28 teachers, but there's a lot more than that involved in this process. We want to make sure that all stakeholders are part of this. So as Sarah mentioned, I met with CPAC to share about this information so that then that could also be brought to the families. I've met with LPAC to work on that. We have newsletters that go out to educators and families. We have continuously in the schools worked with all educators so that during our professional learning communities, during department meetings, during professional development, there's opportunities for all educators to learn about the program so that when we do come to a decision, that it's a decision that all stakeholders have had input into and have knowledge about. In April, we'll finalize our selection. We'll order those materials for high-quality instruction, and we will begin starting to unpack that with our educators so that we're not waiting till the fall. We want to really get our time in before even summer with materials and working with staff so that come fall, they will feel prepared as well, and then continue that. Gleam Team. So here we have in each of our schools, we have K-5 schools. There are 4 of the K-3 schools, BWB, Centerville, High West, and West Villages, and then our 4-5 building, BUES. All are represented. When we created this Gleam Team, we also wanted to make sure that the representation from educators included special ed, included ESL, included reading interventionists, included classroom teachers. And you'll see here we also have district representation, and we have all of the principals involved. We meet monthly to work on how we can continue this work and make decisions so that it's a collective effort. Here is our vision. All Barnstable Public School students deserve joyful and inclusive learning environments that pave the way to continuous learning, curiosity, change-making, and meaningful engagement with the world around them. We aspire to create a learning community with students and teachers engaging in challenging, authentic, adventurous, meaningful, and affirming experiences so that that learning and achievement may flourish for all. Learning and literacy will include speaking, listening, reading, reasoning, and writing that provides opportunities for students to engage with complex texts about thought-provoking topics which reflect their own experiences and those of others, communicate effectively with others, and think critically about their learning through speaking, listening, and various modes of writing, strengthen foundational skills and build knowledge to support comprehension, experience connections in the content and instruction in various educational settings within a student's day. Our goal is to create learning environments where educators and students achieve more than they ever imagined possible. I put ever in. So pilot's underway. We hit the ground 2.5 weeks in, 38 educators. So in this pilot, we do have special educators, ESL teachers, classroom teachers, reading specialists. Everyone is involved in this pilot, and through the design of 2 programs, Amplify CKLA and EL Education. Feedback and data collection will help us to get where we need to go. So as I mentioned, during the field testing, we're asking a lot from the piloting teachers in terms of their experience. We have also opportunities coming up for all educators to get into classrooms. The pilot teachers to get into the other program pilot to see, so that they can see both pieces and not just have what their experience is with one program, but also all educators going into classrooms so that they can see, even though they might not be piloting, we want them to be familiar with what's happening, and they can see the engagement and the programs in action. We have student surveys, parent surveys, the leadership walkthroughs. We'll have 4 more leadership walkthroughs. TNTP, Amplify CKLA, and EL education walkthroughs will be happening. Teacher focus groups, we're planning to get, especially after they've gotten into each other's classrooms, to find out what they're finding in terms of their experience with the programs. Student focus groups in grades 3 through 5. And then lastly, we're going to be visiting districts that are currently piloting these 2 programs so that we can get a well-rounded view of what does it look like in action. It's nice to see how they've made it work in a district and what impacts it has made, so that we can learn from them as well. A highlight, I mentioned we're in 2.5, but from week 1, here's a highlight. Lots of educators and students engagement with new materials, and these are some quotes. Kids are excited. The students were really engaged and enthusiastic. High student engagement. Materials are engaging. Students showing high interest and motivation. Students found the lessons engaging and challenging. All of my students were actively engaged, seeing the excitement in the classroom. And these came from the piloting teachers. They submit a survey every week on different focus areas. And for week 1, we just asked them, what are your initial reactions to launching the pilot? And this is some of the highlights that came from that. As I mentioned, it's really important that all stakeholders are involved in this, that they are informed, that they have a voice, that they can ask questions. So one way that we are doing that, we launched it in November, and every month following, we will be sharing out family newsletters. Now, just to mention, we also share educator newsletters to our staff and the district. The family newsletters are shared so that they can have an understanding of what is happening in the pilot, what are some areas that we would like feedback from. So every time we send out a newsletter, it has another small bit of information. For example, this February, we're going to be sharing out that newly revised literacy vision. And as always, it's a living document, and we want feedback, so that will be part of a survey that will be there. We were really excited to receive an accommodation from DESE. With all of the work that we're doing, we had some family focus groups this past spring and fall, where we not only worked with families in terms of the focus groups, but we wanted to make sure that because Barnstable is so diverse, that we did have an opportunity for all members of our community and our families to be able to voice. So when we did pull our members together, the families that shared, yes, I want to be part of a focus group, we started to realize that there were families that spoke different languages. So we wanted to make sure of that. So we created multiple focus groups so that we would have translators for those. And then we also had 3 other focus groups for different grade spans that were pulled together to get a real pulse on what is important to them when it comes to literacy and how can we use that information moving forward. And DESE highlighted us in their newsletter out to the Commonwealth, congratulating us for what we've been doing with our outreach, especially to families. We are going to continue to do that, but it is really important that if there is something that we can do better in terms of reaching out to families, I know that the countless people that are watching tonight will be able to then share with us. So please take time to take a look at the newsletters. There are surveys, as always, reaching out to any of the principals or any members of our district to let us know what else can we do to involve you would be fabulous. We do have on our website a Gleam tab, and it is at every school that has this grant. So at the 5 schools, you will find on the header a new item that's Gleam, and that's where you can find the newsletters. They are sent out through Aspen. They are sent out through communication from the schools. But if you are one that wants to now go back, we have them located on the website with more information for you. Questions?
Questions or comments? Peter?
Sure. Hi, Carrie.
Hi.
You always give a terrific presentation whenever you're up here, so thank you for that. And I loved your, especially your highlight quote page. That was great. And the whole program sounds terrific. I feel a little ignorant in my lack of knowledge about Gleam. I've certainly have heard it all along here through Kristen, et cetera, but really getting the meat of the program. So I just jotted down some notes here, and bear with me as I try to make sense of it. So we're trying to grow literacy, trying to make our kids better readers and writers and reasoners, et cetera. And it's been a long time since I've taught in elementary. It was back in the 80s. So you were talking a lot about materials, like new literacy materials and selection of materials. And you talked about the high quality instructional materials. I'm just curious, like, what makes for that high quality material? If we didn't have Gleam, would we not have high quality materials in our schools? I mean, so a little bit on the materials, I guess.
Sure, great question. And to answer your question, yes, we would have high quality materials without Gleam. Gleam is just really fantastic because it's also helping with obviously funding, but again, that support that comes with it as well from TNTP. The high-quality instructional materials, over several decades, there has been a literacy, kind of almost like a war, in terms of what is best in terms of literacy instruction. And there is now new research called the Science of Reading that has helped us to understand more specifically what is it that we need to do. So, for example, knowledge building. Rather than teach students in isolation. For example, I would assume that back in 1980, you might have had a week that you'd focus on main idea. And the material that you would choose might be an excerpt from something, and that would help students to grasp main idea and then practice it. And then the next week, it might have been on comparing and contrasting. Sure. And the Science of Reading has helped us to understand that in isolation, that isn't necessarily getting to where we want to build literacy for students. The results are not there. So for high-quality instructional materials, we are looking for knowledge building, students to gain knowledge, and through that, they are writing about what they're reading. They are engaged in complex text. So it's not a text that is specific to a certain skill, it's actual literature, and they're making meaning of that literature. So in 1980, the program materials would have gone with more of that isolated instruction.
Yes.
And now the materials are high quality in terms of building knowledge. In addition to that, foundational skills. So foundational skills, for example, phonemic awareness, knowing the sounds, putting words to the phoneme segmentation, putting those sounds together to make meaning of the words. There needs to be systematic instruction to go with that. So we're looking for materials that not only are building that knowledge, but are also building the skills in terms of those foundational skills for fluency, for phonics, for phonemic awareness.
Okay.
So do
Yeah.
we have that? Yes.
Yeah.
But we, as we go through, the one piece that I will say has really made a change in the products that we're looking at would be the cultural awareness and that cultural responsiveness in literature. I was in classrooms today where students were talking about different poetry, and the authors were representing not of a white male, but the poetry that they've read over the course of the last couple of weeks has been a representation of African Americans, Native Americans, white males, females. They are working to, in the newer program materials, be very culturally responsive. And we want, one of our parameters was to have material that represented our students and our schools, not only as a mirror of who they are, but also a window so that they could learn about other cultures.
Okay. All right. You mentioned there's lots of PD involved because it's that different a program, or
not necessarily. Okay. It's more. It's not as scripted as you might think in terms of taking a book and saying, okay, page 1, lesson 1, I'm doing this. It's really getting to the meat of who these students are in our classrooms, what they need, and really individualizing that instruction for them so that there's a lot more in terms of analyzing data. And it's anecdotal data, observational data, but also assessment type data.
Okay, all right. You mentioned parent surveys. Do parents get the results of these surveys? Like you collect this? Okay.
Yep.
All right. You mentioned reading specialists involved, SPED, ESL, I forget the other groups, a bunch of groups.
Teachers.
Class of teachers. Are there materials for the advanced student, the gateway teacher?
Of course there are.
All right, because I'm always
yes,
worried about those kids.
Believe me, that obviously is very near and dear to my heart for a gateway. But any of the materials that we are looking at have, they lack that ceiling, that there is an entry point for all students, but there isn't a ceiling where it is going to limit students that can take it to a different level.
Okay. And after a few years, how do we know, thanks. Yeah, that was pretty simple. I tried to make this more complicated. How do we know it's working?
Great question. That's data collection will continue after we implement. We have assessment tools in our school system, obviously, that we look at. We use STAR, for example, for our universal screening tool, and we look at the growth 3 times a year in terms of students in literacy. We have STAR Early Literacy for K and 1, STAR Reading for grades 2 through all the way through 9th grade, and we have what's called STAR CBM, which also measures the foundational skills. So that's one component. But in addition to that, it is the actual getting into classrooms and seeing that engagement, seeing the students, and the classroom assessments that they utilize to make sure that there is learning and there is growth. Thank you. You're welcome.
Anybody else? Mike?
Excellent presentation. You answered most of my questions, and I think Peter took care of most of them too. My only thing that I'm kind of, so I know kind of to touch on what Peter said about the PD and like, so you're saying, and I just was looking at the timeline, so you're thinking that they're going to probably get it April, May, probably end of April, May type of thing. So they're going to be able to have some PD and kind of like put their hands on so they're going to be able, my point is they're going to be able to hit the ground running next year, because my concern with this, and I've kind of voiced it a couple of times, was they're not going to see the material till September when they come back. And then all of a sudden it's going to be like, it takes a couple months to get it up and running. So it's like, okay, now we're in November by the time we're actually really starting it. So I'm glad to see that like they're going to be getting it before with PD, and then they can kind of at their own leisure and pleasure, like during the summer or whatever, they can kind of look through it. And as teachers do, they look through it and kind of figure it out as they're figuring out their school year. So that's a huge thing. And I had some real concerns last year. We were looking at a reading program, and it was like the pilot for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that was my huge concern. I know I was not too happy and probably not too nice about how I put it, but just like how we're spending a lot of money based on 2 weeks, that just to me blew my mind. So seeing this through this program of Gleam, it answers all my concerns that I had 2 years ago. So thank you for doing it, and thank you for getting the grant and kind of going with it. It's more organized. Before it was just rushed that we need to hurry up and get something, and that just, then you end up in 3 years saying, wow, this didn't work so well, let's go try something else. And it's like, this is much more organized. And yeah, it's frustrating, I'm sure, to some teachers because it's taking the entire year, but on the other hand, it'll be a better product at the end.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. I do want to speak to the professional development, because I would be remiss in saying we've been working on, every year we have professional development around literacy. This year specifically has been a really deep dive into that science of reading and the research-based. So even though we hadn't started the pilot until now, in September, in November, and this Friday, Kristen had mentioned, we'll have another session where it is working through what does evidence-based instruction for literacy look like in classrooms. Because we do have new teachers. We have teachers that had 1980 instruction, and so we want to make sure that we that we make sure that our foundation is really strong for all educators, and that we're all on the same page when we are working together. It will build collaboration, and it will just make the implementation of new materials that much stronger.
Yes, good presentation. For me, it's the question of early literacy. And how do you see Gleam impacting early literacy, specifically K-3 is my first question.
Mm-hmm. So it's dual. So if you think of what I said about knowledge building and also foundational skills, the both programs are strong in both of those. So it's a nice problem to have when you're looking at two programs that are quality programs. In terms of early literacy for students, there is that need for building their knowledge so that they can work with complex text, so that it's not just a decodable reader that they can actually read, but it's also building their vocabulary, building their understanding and background knowledge. As we move through, that will just support them that much more in terms of applying that to become readers. So, and in terms of the foundational skills, there is a real strong component in both of these programs on foundational skills that are systematic, that are methodical, so that students are going through and learning the skills that are foundational to literacy, so that then they can grapple and become readers by third grade.
Okay, that's good. Because, you know, when students do not have literacy by third grade, that's a notable indicator.
Absolutely.
In terms of their trajectory throughout the rest of public education and then further on in life, and how Gleam can accelerate that early literacy, good, you know, and helps to instill belief in the program. My last question, we have a high percentage of dual language learners. So how do you see Gleam interfacing with our K-3 students who English is their second language?
Great question, and that was one of our major parameters because of the diverse population and the assets of multilingual students in our schools. We wanted to make sure that that was first and foremost when we were looking at materials. I will say that in the surveys that we've received thus far, I visited Hyannis West Elementary School today and saw 4 classrooms. And there is a resounding, the students are engaged. There are scaffolds that are needed, as sheltered immersion instructional strategies that are needed to support students. But the knowledge building, for example, in first grade, they're learning about the human body, and they're really learning about muscular system and skeletal system through reading. And it's not a reading necessarily that they're sitting down and reading muscular system and skeletal system, but they're learning that knowledge. And what we're finding across the board, whether it's Amplify CKLA or EL Education, the knowledge building it isn't packaged in a 1 week where we read a story for 1 week and then the next week we move on to a new story. They build that knowledge in multiple stories, in multiple articles, multimedia, to be able to build that knowledge. And with that becomes stronger discourse for students. They're talking to each other about what they're learning. One of the educators at 4th and 5th grade building said the other day, I was in the cafeteria doing cafeteria duty, and they were having a debate over the poem that they were reading and the context of it. That really usually doesn't happen. So that's a win. That's something that we hope that students will not only learn skills, but actually have that joyful learning and that curiosity.
So again, thank you, Carrie. The presentation, the program in and of itself, but early literacy, and from K-3, those students getting to proficient and then possibly advanced. To Peter's point, our students that are showing advancement at that grade 3 level, and clearly the good work that you're doing with Gateway. How do we keep them ahead of the curve and challenge them, and make sure that they are maintaining that high arc. But for our students that are in the middle and then possibly behind after that third grade year, the program is wonderful, and I'm hoping that this Gleam grant will be targeting and focusing on helping to catch those students up, and making sure that they don't continue to fall behind as can be the case after third grade, once literacy is not acquired.
Can I just mention something? Gleam is not just for high-quality instructional materials. It's to support us with multiple tiered systems of supports as well, the MTSS model that we have in Massachusetts. And with that comes so that we're not waiting till third grade. For our students not reading now, and now what do we do? We are starting in the lower grades, preschool, kindergarten, looking at that data, looking at their performance, and really targeting. So it's tier 1, but it's also tiers 2 and 3, and how do we support students that may not be showing what they need to be in terms of their readiness skills, and how can we support them?
Jen, do you have anything, or you?
I don't. I'm just happy that we're doing ELL and that the diversity is there, and that's, you know, moving forward in life, as always, that's very important and always has been to me. So I think however we can support that, it's fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I just want to ask a couple things. So on the professional development, the teachers are receiving materials towards the end of the school year, and then we'll have time over the summer to work with it. But are there any structured professional development activities planned? And I would assume that the teachers would need to be compensated. But is something planned during the summer months in a structured way so that everybody can be ready and fully trained in these materials?
Great question. So a couple of things. One, we're planning on having the materials ordered in April, by the end of April. You know, delivery is always fun. So we're hoping they will be here by the end of April. We're looking to embed that in our professional learning communities, in our time, in our department meetings moving forward throughout the rest of the year. In May, there will be actual professional development from the company as well for whatever we're purchasing, so that it's an unpacking of what is the curriculum and how do you navigate it and what are the resources. So as I mentioned, we've been doing a lot of professional development this year in terms of effective evidence-based literacy practices, so that when they do have materials in hand, they can start utilizing those strategies and instructional moves with the new curriculum. But the company will be coming in May for all educators so that they have that. And then moving forward over the summer, we're still working on that plan, but I envision some voluntary times. We'll also be doing some curriculum writing so that there is an understanding of that scope and sequence, and some guiding resources for teachers in that respect. So there will be teachers engaged in that will be compensated for curriculum writing purposes, for curriculum maps and the scope and sequence. In terms of teachers engaged, there are multiple ways that teachers, I can imagine some just want to have their summer, and the majority of them want to dig in because they are so committed for their students, but there might be more of that asynchronous opportunity as well. With the platform has on-demand resources, et cetera. So, but I'll have a better answer for you as we work towards what the program will be, and then what opportunities we can provide.
Okay, great. And the reason that I asked that is I do know that when reading programs are selected, and especially when special education teachers are using them, it isn't just that you have the program available, but that the regulations also state that all the special education teachers are to be thoroughly trained in all the programs that they're expected to be using. So that was one concern. And then you did mention that they are being tested, and you said that there was a special education group testing. Is this a special education teacher with a pull-out group of students testing the materials, or are these
the field
just
testing? I was thinking assessment.
I'm not testing, sorry.
The pilot.
Assessing,
Yes.
using the pilot.
Yep. So
Grade level.
For example, I was at High West today in Samantha Lowe's classroom, and Emily Manna is a special education teacher in that classroom, and she is co-piloting with Samantha Lowe. The program, so she is pushing in to work with students within the classroom. Obviously, she also has, per her grid, for supporting students on the IEP, her time that she would also pull out. But in terms of special ed and that training that you're talking about, they have been involved, not only special education teachers, ESL teachers, Title I reading teachers, reading specialists, classroom teachers. They have all been through what I've talked about in terms of professional development. In May, they will be there as well. So we're not looking at this as the classroom teacher gets the training and everyone else. Hopefully you'll have time to look for the resources. It is comprehensive, it is inclusive, and we want to make sure not only do they have the training and the knowledge for special ed, they have to modify and they have to accommodate. And so how do we do that? But also for that collaboration piece so that the educators are working together and supporting the students.
So I do know there are small numbers, but there are some students who only receive their reading and writing and math instruction through special educators. So that's why I had asked. And then, just see one more thing. Andre, I just want to follow up, and then I'll let Mike ask his last question. You mentioned that when students don't have the literacy by grade 3, they need the interventions, or they're stopped. I think we all know that students can learn to read at any age. Many of us, not everybody, have those stories of someone who was not a reader at all, who was a lot older than third grade, who then was able to learn to read. So I do think that a love of reading, I loved hearing and seeing the comments about the engagement and how much the students were enjoying the materials and the lessons that were being provided, because I think for any person, there is nothing better than being able to read whatever they want to read and enjoying that as not just for learning, but a pastime. So I think it's very important. Mike, you have one last?
Yeah, I just have one question that just dawned on me. So I know we talked about which of the two programs we're picking, and my question is, and my concern is from past, nobody in this room, but years ago we had a pilot for a math program. The teachers all vented what they wanted for the math program, and then the powers to be went with a different math program, and it brought in a lot of resentment towards the folks that had done the testing, or the rubber meets the road in the classroom. So I guess how is this being selected?
Really great question.
More because it's a public forum, so.
No, really great question. As I mentioned, that feedback, we're asking pilot teachers every week to provide feedback. We're not waiting till the end and then saying, hey, remember back 9 weeks? How did this all lay out? We're targeting the vision that I shared with you. We're taking components of that. So for example, this week, K-2 teachers are, their focus for this week is around those foundational skills and how do they meet the needs of all students in your classroom, and answering questions in a survey based on that. So we're getting that feedback every week. We're asking families for their feedback. So for example, in terms of family engagement, we've shared how, like the resources that are online for both programs. So if you have a child that is in a pilot classroom, let's say for Amplify CKLA, there are a lot of family resources that are being shared from the pilot teachers to the families, and we want to find out from the families, how did that land? Was that helpful for you? Did that support literacy at home? Did that support what you need to have from our district in terms of student learning around literacy? So when it comes down to it, it will not be, a leadership from the district level behind closed doors making any decisions. The GLEAM team, as I mentioned, is a committee that's working together, but we look at it as a vertical alignment. So there's the district and the strategic advising that's happening with TNTP. In addition to that, we have that GLEAM team, and each school is represented. So there's another layer, kind of like the spine, the school team, and then the school team goes to the teachers that are piloting, and then outreach to all educators in the school to get that feedback. So it will not be. There's a lot coming
I
in.
appreciate that. Thank you.
I think if I'm going to be
As
blunt,
when Joe first got on, Joe and
Joe's
Kathy
fine.
first got on, but it was caused a lot of angst and a lot of problems
Right,
back
so I
then. So
guess-
thank you for.
It takes a village, and we want the village
And you want
with
buy-in by
us.
the village, otherwise it just doesn't work. Okay,
I'm
thank
going
you.
to piggyback on Mike and just say it straight. We think the teachers and the people who are working directly with the students deserve two votes to each of the other constituents, 1 vote, because they're the ones that really know. So I agree with Mike. We do not want a top-down driven decision. We don't believe that that's beneficial to the students.
Nor does the
So-
district. That
Right.
is absolutely true.
And then, I know we need to move on because I'm looking at the clock, but I am curious if, and I had asked you this in a separate meeting that I was in with you already, but is with the link with the opportunity to feedback from the families, are the numbers increasing with the families
It's getting there.
responding to that?
It takes a bit. I think that the inclusion of having it on the website, because the feedback came, we get it in an email, and it goes, right? Not everyone pours over their emails. So it was harder. Like, someone might say, oh, that's great, but maybe they're, at the grocery store, and they're looking at their phone, and they get this email, and it's like, oh, I'll look at that later, and then it's gone. So making it more accessible for families as well was a feedback that came from families saying, I got it, but I wasn't able to read it, and I wanted to. And now that I've learned about it, can I go back to those other newsletters? So we're starting, and we kept the surveys open. So even back from November, the surveys that the questions that were asked from that survey, it is still open for families to be able to share that feedback.
You were killing yourself trying to get the replies, so I was just curious if they had been increasing. I think you
there.
made it very easy for families to engage if they so choose. So as long as they know. Those little ones, they go home and tell all, so they have to know about it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think you're off the hook. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And nice meeting you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Item 5.2, 2024-2025 school calendar. Sarah?
Great, thank you. So in your packet is our 2 school calendars for a first read. We are in the process of getting feedback on these calendars to then come back to you in March for a vote. The first calendar, option A, starts before Labor Day on Monday, August 26th. And 180 school days later would be June 13th, which would be the last day of school, half day for students. And then option B starts the first day of school on Tuesday, September 3rd for students, with 2 teacher days the week prior, and has the last day of school as June 17th. As you are aware, we sent out a calendar survey. There were some elements of feedback from a variety of different sources, including staff and some of our administrators, suggesting that we reconsider our professional development model. I think the presentation that you just saw is a really great example of why we need professional development across the district in terms of implementing new curriculum. We have a ton of mandates from the state around which we have to train our staff, oftentimes on an annual basis. And Sandwich is an example of a district that does it a little bit differently than we do, where we have been having half days. And Sandwich, for example, does an early release of 60 minutes every Wednesday. And so there were some suggestions to conduct a survey and get a sense from faculty and staff, as well as from families, related to preferences, and challenges. So I sent a brief survey out. I had a great response rate, I thought, and have some of the results to share with you, which informed these two options, although we've been working with 4 options for a couple of weeks in draft form until the survey results came back. So we had just under 500 faculty and staff responses at 496 and 546 family responses. And when asked regarding their preferences for half-days versus 60-minute early releases, there was preference for half-days among faculty and staff, as noted here, with 48.1% total either strongly preferring or preferring the half-days. And then for families, it was a little higher than that at 51.2%. These numbers don't add up to 100 because there was a neutral category. So I didn't include the neutral. I just included those that either preferred or the half days versus the early releases. So with this information, we then built these 2 calendars with half days instead of the 60-minute early releases. I'm still working my way through the comments, haven't had much time to decipher all those, but certainly we'll look at those between now and March 6th. And we'll share the results with families and with faculty and staff in the coming days. In terms of which day is best for half-days, we put out the survey with Wednesday being preferred by faculty and staff, but a decently strong number of percent, in my opinion, also suggesting that Fridays would work, and families at 56.9%, feeling like Fridays would be a preferred day for a half-day. We also took into account the high school schedule, so any changes related to the calendar. We wanted to look at the high school schedule. As I mentioned earlier, the high school teachers and the administrators have been working really hard to consider a different way of putting together the schedule that is a 2-week cycle, 2-week rotation, still containing 7 class periods, 5 periods meet every day. So over 2 weeks, every class will meet an equal number of times. It also includes something called stable time, which is a school-wide community building block. And then, as I mentioned, teacher support time built into the day and advisory. Taking that into consideration, the feedback from the high school schedulers was that Friday would be preferred. So that's not necessarily showing up in the survey, but is another factor that we took into consideration. And I think it would probably fall, I might be making an assumption, but fall on a day with stable time. So then stable time could be a class time on that Friday. So I'm going to pause there for a second and just turn your attention to the calendars. So we put half days for professional development in September, December, January, February, March, April, and May. So there are 7, which is consistent with what we have had. And we tried to avoid Fridays that coincide with a long weekend. In looking at attendance on those Fridays, a lot goes into planning professional development. There may be some significant costs that go into consultants for professional development. And so the Fridays are not coinciding with long weekends in these drafts. The other area that we surveyed about was parent-teacher conferences. So what we have been doing is we've been having parent-teacher conferences in December, and my understanding is over time it's been in different months and in different places. We split up pre-K to 3 and grades 4 through 7 in different weeks, which in our debrief around parent-teacher conferences was a great help in terms of scheduling translations and interpreters. So we wanted to continue to kind of divide things up so that we could maximize the interpretation services that we have. We were hearing from some principals that they were getting feedback from their faculty and staff that they wanted conferences earlier. And so we put the survey out to examine conferences. And so in these drafts, I think we're responding as best as we can tell, to what we learned from the data, while also considering the time of year. Our pre-K educators were most interested in keeping that December conference schedule, which I think coincides well with their instructional time. There was a slight preference from K-3 educators for the end of October. The grades 4 and 5 educators were roughly split between the end of October and mid-November. Grades 6 through 7 were more preferential towards mid-November, I think, to coincide with the marking period right at that point in time. And then families was kind of an even split between end of October and mid-November. So we took this data. It's very hard with families having children in multiple grade levels to sort of parse through all the possible combinations and preferences for families. So what we ended up doing, we also took into consideration things that are happening. For example, the early literacy screening would have just happened in the September-October timeframe. So we are suggesting 2 half-days for K-3 in October, which is why you do not see a half-day professional development day in October. 2 half-days in November for grades 4 through 7, and then 2 half-days in December just for pre-K. And we added, we don't normally have, because of parent conferences, a half-day for PD in December, but that's included there. That's the end of the data for this presentation. One other thing that I would point out that is a difference in the calendar this year comes from some feedback last year. It included feedback from some teachers. It included feedback from the Barnstable Teachers Association. And then also, I guess we had a little bit of a pilot related to Barnstable, West Barnstable last year, and that is holding school on Good Friday. So in terms of cultural proficiency and equity across the district and inclusivity, the feedback had included kind of maybe a feeling disconcerted about recognizing Good Friday as a holiday and not recognizing other holidays in the school calendar. And then when we had a closure at one of our schools, the suggestion was to hold school on Good Friday, which we did. We surveyed faculty and staff, and I think we had 94% or 97% indicating that that was their preference, was to keep school on Good Friday, and that they would be in attendance, because that would also be a concern, is whether or not people would want to take a personal day. But we held school on Good Friday last year at BWB. I don't have attendance data related to students, but anecdotally, in talking with the principal, there was solid attendance. And so these drafts do not include Good Friday as a day off of school. They include Good Friday, which is April 18th, as a school day. So that's, I think, the relevant details here related to the calendars, and they're being circulated among the Barnstable Teachers Association, which is a practice that we do every year, and we also shared it with the principals and directors as well. But we've been talking about it in meetings for the past 2 months or so as we shaped this up. Any questions?
Thank you for doing the survey. I appreciate that. I kind of had asked for it, and thank you for sending it out to the families and the staff just to kind of see how is it disrupting their lives for the families. How is it disrupting their lives? So thank you for sending that out.
You're welcome. I do understand the disruption. It's tough, but we do have some needs. As I mentioned, this was a great example tonight with Glean, but then also so many mandated things that we're required to do. Carving out some time is really valuable and important, so thank you.
All right, item 5.3, revised policy BEDHE guidelines for public comment. This is the first read. The change was to remedy a discrepancy as far as, I believe, if I recall, it had to do with the length of time we were holding public comment. One place said 20, the other said 30, so we made them both match at 30. So that's in the packet, and anybody with feedback, Peter and I, we have a meeting tomorrow, but you can get back to us at any time if you have a concern. Item 5.4, revised policy JIC, student discipline. This was not a large revision. So we were comparing the MASC updates, and it was recommended that a piece of information that we had at the bottom that referenced Mass General Law and the impact on the policy was actually moved up to the body of the text, just so that it would be easier for people. Item 5.5, create policy EFE, civil rights complaint policy for child nutrition programs. This is a new recommended policy by MASC, and we revised it slightly for the Barnstable to make it fit for Barnstable. Item 5.6, create policy EHAA, district security relating to technology. Again, this is a new policy that's being recommended by MASC and provides some additional guidelines regarding security. Item 5.7, create policy EHB, data and records retention. This primarily is dealing with providing a policy that takes into consideration electronic records. So again, anybody who has any questions on any of those revisions or new policies can filter those to Peter or me or the superintendent. Finance and facilities business, item 6.1, create initial presentation of the fiscal year 25 budget, Chris Dwelly and Dr. Ahern.
Thank you. Relocating so that we can co-present initial information to the school committee and the community regarding the FY25 operating budget. I want to thank Chris for all his work behind the scenes in putting this together, collaborating with the town finance department as well. I'll kick us off and then turn it over when we get to the numbers, although I get into the details on them too. The annual budget, these are some policy statements that occur every year in the presentation. The financial expression of the educational program of the school department reflects your goals, your objectives, your values around meeting the needs of all students. It is a financial instrument, but it's more than that. It requires on the part of the committee, the staff, and the community an orderly and cooperative effort to ensure sound fiscal practices for achieving the educational goals and objectives of the school system. I do want to commend Chris for coming into the district about a year ago and working as a great partner related to our sound fiscal practices. And I just want to take the opportunity to commend him publicly. Public school budgeting is regulated and controlled by legislation, state regulations, and local school committee requirements. We are preparing and presenting the budget for FY25 in line with state policy, and over the next several meetings and weeks, we will develop and refine it according to these requirements. I serve as the budget officer and may delegate portions of this responsibility to members of the staff. Many of that might be delegated to Chris, for example, as the finance gentleman. And the general areas that I oversee is budget preparation, budget presentation, and administration. Development to date, so we really kick off the budget development cycle in October with the joint meeting with the town council to review the financial condition and financial policies of the town. Mark Milne has typically led those presentations and shares the fiscal forecast. At the end of that month, Town Manager Mark Ells and I revisit and connect on the policy agreement on allocation of projected general fund revenue growth, which has typically been shared in a 60-40 split between the schools and the town. Through the month of December, we had our 18 sites submit budget requests. And then in January, we held 2 marathon days of one-on-one meetings. Actually, it wasn't one-on-one meetings, because we had this year we brought the entire central office team, including Eric Brunage and Catherine Zinni, Kristen Harmon, Mary Beth Taylor, myself, and Chris to review all of the site budgets. Wanted to get sort of a more holistic, integrated view of what people were asking for. I said it last year, and you'll see it again, one of the priorities being equity across our sites and collaboration and cooperation, particularly if we're struggling to fill positions. And I want to commend our principals for collaborating and cooperating. For example, with school psychologists, we've had some vacancies, and our principals have understood when we've reassigned people temporarily to support each building, although assignments are typically made on a building basis. So we've been developing the budget behind the scenes, kind of eagerly awaiting our actual state numbers, and the House 1 budget came out at the end of January from Governor Healy, and we'll talk more about that tonight. And then tonight's the initial budget presentation, which is intentionally really high level, and then we'll get more detailed in successive meetings, including the budget workshop next week, and then ultimately the recommended budget in early March. In terms of priorities, some of these, I think, or all of these should be really pretty familiar. They carry over from last year, but I did include a few updates, I suppose, of emphasis. So we have a new district improvement plan. So I think the budget is the vehicle to support our collective goals within that improvement plan. We know we need to attend to a diverse set of student needs, much of which was talked about this evening. Many of this is mandated, and so I think we need to make sure that we're following the state policy laws, as I had mentioned. Continuing to focus on equitable allocation of resources, and so looking across our school buildings, considering the sites, the students, families, and making sure that we're equitably allocating, in particular, staff, but not only staff. I think space and facilities is an area that we are and need to continue to pay attention to, particularly around equity across the sites. Efficient and effective systems. Again, want to commend Chris for thinking about our systems and working to have more efficient and effective systems in the district, so that we can leverage limited dollars as best we can. We know that we have some big ticket items around facilities planning and space needs. So that would be an area of priority, whether we focus funding on monies from the operating budget, we use savings from our savings account, or work collaboratively with the town around the borrowing, capital trust fund borrowing. This year, there is sort of the elephant in the room, which is that ESSER is expiring. We have about $4 million in expenses in ESSER. I know there's some perceptions in the public. I haven't heard as much in Barnstable, but I think you hear it more at the state level, that a lot of funds haven't been spent, and schools got all these dollars and haven't spent them. And we all have plans. They are, in our minds, encumbered and allocated resources that we plan to spend. About $2.2 million of our ESSER funds is going towards personnel, including some personnel that our sites are advocating to keep in some really key areas. And so we do have a plan over the next 4 years to fold positions in as a result of the ESSER funding expiring. Lots of districts are in this position. A lot of money flooded in from the federal government. And when your budget is 70% personnel and the work that we do is very human focused, there's only so many masks and PPE and other things that that the federal dollars could go towards. And so a lot of positions, not only in Barnstable, but really in every district, were being funded through ESSER dollars. And then we're also looking ahead at sustainability, finding ways to make sure that we're looking forward, not just thinking about FY25, but thinking ahead at the sustainability of our budget. I'm going to turn it over to Chris to talk about some of the budget assumptions.
Great, thanks. So given all that, our preliminary revenue share allocation is just shy of $87 million. This is the figure that came out of the joint school committee and town council meeting that occurred in the fall. One thing that I will note at this point, but we will go into greater detail in some subsequent slides, is that when we were developing this, our Chapter 70 state aid number had not yet been released by the governor. It has since been released, and it is $3 million shy of our assumptions. So in working with Mark Milne and the finance department, we are going to look for ways to hold that figure that you see there for the revenue share allocation. But at this point, it may be difficult for us to make that up. So we are estimating that we will be using some school savings to keep that figure as it stands and to help balance the budget. So that's why we have preliminary there at this point. But I just wanted to highlight that number because you're going to see the 86,920 in a lot of the subsequent slides. Our revolving fund offsets, we use 3: circuit breaker, school choice, and transportation. The difference here this year is that we had a few out-of-district placements age out, and so we're receiving less in our circuit breaker reimbursement this year than we had the year prior. Sarah talked about ESSER and our 4-year plan. That plan is to stagger our ESSER incorporation into the operating budget by fully funding all those positions the first year with 100% of savings. If you see at the bottom of the slide there, that number matches the ESSER. That's the 100%. Next year, we would fund those positions with 75% of savings. The following year would be 50% of savings, and then the final year would be 25% of savings, so that, again, we can kind of step down and not have the sticker shock of trying to absorb $2.2 million into our general fund operating budget. On salary and wages, you see our figure here that we are estimating. This does include the wage adjustment figure that the school committee has been discussing as it relates to recent negotiations with collective bargaining units in the school department. And speaking with our special education department and our transportation department, we are anticipating a handful of new out-of-district placements for next year. So we are looking at a sizable increase of just over $1.5 million. This does include both the tuition costs as well as the transportation costs. We have a handful of inflationary adjustments around utilities and some of our contractual services. We also have our software contracts that we have that have escalation clauses with them. I shouldn't say escalation clauses, but inflationary clauses with them. And we also incorporated our new cybersecurity contract beginning this year using school choice funds that is being folded into the operating budget in FY25 and beyond. There's been a desire by the school committee to continue to fully fund our substitute costs. And so we've done that this year by fully funding our estimated building-based substitute costs. In years past, they were not fully funded. I think that there was a impression that these were maybe one-time positions during COVID, but I think, as Sarah I'm sure can attest to, we found that they're integral parts of our school operations here, and so we want to build those into the budget. And then the savings account support I discussed earlier.
Just jump in for one
Yeah,
second.
sure.
I want to talk just for a moment about the special education increase that's expected. Last year, we didn't talk much about special education increases. Sometimes you have, budgetarily speaking, a favorable year, and sometimes you'll see these increases. Last year, as Chris mentioned, we had a number of students age out, so our tuition, I think, actually either stayed flat or went down slightly. But there was an enormous increase, a 14% increase in tuitions, which was set by OSD, Operational Services Department, set a 14% increase in special education tuition last year. We did not feel that because of a number of our students aging out, but we're seeing an increase coming up. And I would say that our special education teams do an excellent job assessing, talking with families, holding meetings, and identifying what is most appropriate of settings for their children.
We like to share district enrollment each year as it informs our foundation budget and the Chapter 70 allocation that we receive each year. You'll see at the far right that we've got a slight reduction in district enrollment for school year 24. We like to further break that down into subgroup enrollments, as this also informs our foundation budget and Chapter 70 allocation that we receive. You see kind of trends here with our English language learners, as well as our high needs population. Sarah, did you want to add something? Okay.
What categorizes high needs? I mean,
High needs is a combination of English learners, students with disabilities, and economically disadvantaged. So they, you could have students who are, for example, both an English language learner and a student with disabilities, so they're going to show up in both of those charts. But then combined as a total population, is the high needs category, where that child would just be counted as a single individual. So it combines our English language learners, students with disabilities, and economically disadvantaged.
thank you.
Should I hold questions till the end? I've got a couple, or do you want me to pepper them now? I'm happy to.
What's your preference?
Maybe at the end, just
Yeah, it's
so,
fine.
because there may be some things that we touch upon as we go. It's not a very long presentation, so.
The next few slides talk about the general fund support for the FY25 budget. This includes the appropriation from local taxes and fees. It includes our state aid figures, as well as our revolving fund support, which we'll go into detail in each slide here. So this details our highest revenue source here, which is our local taxes and fees through the town's revenue share agreement, which is a 60% allocation to the school department and a 40% allocation to general government municipal purposes. That is the $82 million figure that we discussed previously. The next slide details our Chapter 70 allocation from FY23 to this present fiscal year to what has just been released in the H1, the governor's budget at the state. And Sarah wanted to speak a little bit to the details, particularly as it relates to our allocation this year and next year.
Yeah, so this really took us by surprise when we saw the governor's budget. And we are not alone in that. A number of districts across the state are really quite concerned with the numbers that they've seen coming from the governor. For Barnstable, it is a swing that the magnitude is probably greater than many of other districts have experienced, in that we had the highest percentage increase of Chapter 70 aid last year at $6 million and a 32% increase. And we expected that to be sustained. The projections that we had from the town finance department expected that to be sustained with the $3 million estimate in October. I had some professional, not really a consultant, but somebody who works with the Association of School Superintendents trying to help us forecast. In talking with him, he felt that that was a solid number. So this was really quite a surprise to go from a foundation aid district at $6 million to now a minimum aid district at $159,180 of an increase, or 0.64%. What they are proposing to fund is a cost of an additional $30 per pupil. And most towns are receiving minimum aid. We just had gone from a foundation aid to a minimum aid. The big factor contributing to this, as I understand it, is inflation. Inflation is actually quite low at this point in time, at 1.3%. So the governor's budget is funded at a 1.3% inflation rate. But it doesn't take into account the historic inflation that we've seen in the past 2 years, which has been more like 7.5%, 8.5%. And the Student Opportunity Act in the past couple of years capped inflation at 4.5%. So there actually is still a lot of opportunity costs that came from the past 2 years, but now it's being funded at 1.3%. So there's an advocacy platform from the Association of School Superintendents and School Committees to have the Senate and the House fund at a more appropriate inflation rate, taking into consideration the inflation rate in recent history. The other area of advocacy is, instead of $30 per pupil, would be to fund Chapter 70 at $125 per pupil. So that is another ask that is being made. I did talk with Senator Sear and Representative Diggs at the most recent legislative breakfast to point out these concerns. I do appreciate that the town finance department is looking to meet that 5% or $86.9 million number if they can, to continue to support the schools. But this was really disappointing. I do have a call on Friday at 3 o'clock with Mass Taxpayers Association to better understand what's happening here as well, because it was really quite a surprise. And we're not alone. There are other districts in a similar spot.
This slide just shows our year-over-year general fund allocation. You see the total amount coming from that revenue source, and then the savings use that we've used in the past. And you see the figures that we've talked about previously. This slide just gives you a kind of linear view of the general fund growth year over year. The 7.79% this year was that large amount of Chapter 70 aid that we received for this year. We were originally at 5.2. That'll likely drop down if we end up having to use some savings to retain that $86 million. Next up, quickly, our revolving account offsets. First is our school choice. So the school district retains 100% of the school choice tuition for receiving students from other districts. That amount goes right into the school committee's school choice revolving fund. Under the FY24 budget column, under the revenue, the $599,000, that is what the actual receiving tuition in the district is this year. That is what we're receiving. And we are using $748,000. $600,000 was voted on by the school committee in the spring, and then another $148,000 was voted on in the fall to fund the cybersecurity program. We are estimating, given historical figures, that we'll receive $600,000 next year, and so we're using $600,000 again this year to offset the FY25 budget. This just gives you a glimpse of where we are receiving students from. Next is the Circuit Breaker program, which provides relief for high-cost special education students. The calculation that the state has is that they reimburse districts 75% of costs that are above $49,000, $494 for each student. And the next slide details out that calculation based on our figures. So we had 64 eligible students claimed for total eligible expenses of $5.6 million. The foundation amount of $3.1 million is essentially that amount that is below that $46,000 threshold figure that I had just mentioned, $49,000, excuse me. And then we've netted out the instructional, tuition, and transportation costs and the factors that they are multiplied. So that gives us $1.8 million in total reimbursement for FY24 based on FY23 figures. We use that amount to offset the next year's budget, the FY25 budget. So that $1.8 million is being used as an offset to our budget. And we are estimating $2.1 million in revenue next year based on our 24 figures, given some small changes to our tuition this year.
If I can just jump in for one moment on circuit breaker, I do want to commend our team. I think you see these figures and you might not necessarily know what goes on behind the scenes in order to claim the student information, but Chris and Sandy Gifford and Eric Brunage and Catherine Zinni did tremendous work, and now we have Claudia Beltran. We thank the committee for your support in adding an additional administrative assistant in our office, but they go through individual bills, POs, and invoices related to students in terms of their tuition and services and transportation. The transportation piece is new, and so I think there was a fair amount of anxiety that the accounting was happening correctly. We did have an audit from the Department of Education, which we sailed through. It was hard work, but we sailed through it, and these folks are putting tremendous work into making sure that we get all that we ought to from our circuit breaker claims.
This slide is just a visual representation of all of the kind of input, the revenue sources that we just discussed. So to summarize, the site priorities and the conversations that have occurred, Sarah's going to run through this slide, and then we're going to kind of wrap up where we are to date with all we've just discussed.
So in terms of site priorities, these are pretty staggering numbers. I would say that the bulk of these, the majority, maybe not the majority, but a very sizable chunk is related to retaining ESSER-funded positions, which is why the numbers are so significantly high compared to last year's site submissions. So we had 108 submissions from 18 sites. The net cost of these requests totals $5.1 million and includes 70.2 FTE. Major submission themes, as I noted, talked about retaining most ESSER-funded positions. This includes approximately 30 FTEs involving counselors, paraprofessionals like PCAs, and teachers, including classroom teachers, English language learner teachers, and special educators. So retaining these positions, I think, is really important in terms of that second goal related to meeting student needs and meeting the statutory requirements we have in particular areas. On top of that, we are continuing to see requests for support for our English language learners, including additional family liaisons. We are very thankful and grateful to have a wonderful cadre of family liaisons to support our families. They do far more than interpretation and translation. They are key to families, welcoming families, having families feel like they belong, and are integral supports in the system. We also have some translation requests for additional contracted services to translate technical documents like special education, IEPs, report cards, and things like that. Teachers for ELs and bilingual paraprofessionals. We're having tremendous success with the bilingual paraprofessionals that we put into the buildings last year, so it's not a surprise to me that we're seeing site requests for additional bilingual staff. And in special education, additional teachers to support a growing population. We're expecting 18 students coming into our kindergarten from the Early Learning Center. That's a bigger number than we've seen in recent history. Paraprofessional support, and with some additional special education students and IEPs and more intense needs, some requests for additional kind of leadership support and coordination with team chairs and coordinators. So those are some of the themes. There's also other individual requests, but those are the big themes.
And this is an overview financially of where we are in our current state with the FY25 budget. I just want to make note that these figures here, they exclude all the department requests that Sarah just discussed, with the exception of our contractual obligations, particularly related to our special education tuition costs, special education transportation costs, and a few other things like the JROTC program that we just signed and partnered with. So draw your attention to the middle of the table that has the border. You see our salary and wages are at $70.7 million, year-over-year increase of 4%. Our supply budget is actually going down by 3%. That's because a few of the one-time supplies that we budgeted for this year are dropping off next year at this stage. Our operating contracted services, this is where you see our transportation, our special education costs are $15 million, or 16% increase. And then the ESSER incorporation at 2.2 for a total of $90 million. We've listed out here our revenue sources, and that leaves us to a grand total deficit of a little over $800,000 at this point. The last slide, we wanted to detail a little history and then a forward look at the school savings account, just given that we plan to use a few $1 million in the FY25 budget. So the top section is actually last year's figures, what we used savings for, and what we actually brought in when our books were closed and our free cash was certified by the state earlier in the fall. So the balance on July 1, 2023, the $10.2 million, is our actual balance at this point. So we've listed here our ESSER costs, the $1 million that I mentioned that we believe we may need to use to balance the operating budget if the $86 million cannot be sustained. Our capital program, when this went to print, this was an estimate at $2.1 million. We were pretty close. We got the final figures from the team yesterday, and we're off by about $20,000 in the positive. So, and then everything else is an estimate. So we're using last year's with a little escalation returned appropriation. We are using last year's fixed cost return estimate. And then the excess revenue, we are conservatively estimating that for two reasons. One is that if the finance department is going to look to fill that shortfall, that gap with the Chapter 70, they'll likely look at local receipts. And that means that if they increase the estimates there, that'll return less in excess revenue the following year. The other is that the $4.6 million that we actually received is a staggering number. Those are still COVID figures, things like investment incomes, building permits that skyrocketed during that time. We're not sure if those will sustain over time, so we wanted to drop down the figure to the 1.1 that you see there. That figure is more in line with pre-COVID numbers related to our excess revenue costs. So after this year, after the following year, you see that we're projecting a balance of $4.9 million in the school savings account. And we'll just wrap up with the next steps.
So as I mentioned, next week we have the budget roundtable review where we'll take a look at site requests. But with a deficit going into the budget, I think we've got our work cut out for us, and we'll definitely have some limitations in terms of what we're going to be able to accommodate. We will present a more detailed budget on March 6th at your regular meeting, holding your school budget public hearing on the evening of March 20th, with a proposed timeframe for the school committee to adopt the budget on April 3rd, after which it gets submitted to the town manager to be brought before the town council more towards the June timeframe.
Questions? Jen?
Yes, thank you. It's good that I waited because there were a couple things that were answered. One was the balance in the savings account, so who knew? So as property tax values go up, people's taxes go up, there'll be more revenue to the town. So, and I know you touched on that in the last slide. Has Mark Milne mentioned anything about how high your allocation, how much more you'll get based upon that?
It was 5%.
Was that in the very, you went quickly, I think, through the slides, and I couldn't find it fast enough.
It might have been listed in there, but it's a little over, if it was like 5.2%.
So that helps, a little bit with the gap.
Yes.
Right, yeah. And then just a question I should probably know the answer to, and I think I do, dual enrollment counts as enrollment at Barnstable High School as well, correct?
Yes.
Not just 4Cs, okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions? Andre? Mike?
Yeah, so a couple questions and a couple comments. First of all, special education, it said it was going up $1,562,158, right? So when you say go up, is that costing us? Is that actually negative? Is that costing us an extra 1.5 million?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's not the total of our,
But so we're not getting more money in that, it's actually a deficit.
it's more funds taken away from.
Taken away, it's a minus.
Not taken away, but.
Doing my check in the
increasing
book.
costs for those areas.
Right.
Yes.
And I think if I can jump in for a second, depending upon if the students sort of meet the threshold for circuit breaker, we might be able to expect some of that to come back in circuit breaker in the following year.
Right, because
where
you get
we'll
it
see
this year for next year. So this year we had a dip, so that's why we're getting.
Less.
And next year it's going up by the amount we're spending is going up by 1.5 million. So you kind of have a deficit for that year, and then we'll get that money the year after.
It's certainly not a one-for-one.
What's that?
It's certainly not a one-for-one. We won't receive.
No, right. But you're gonna get something.
You'll get something.
You get some increase, okay. So just, I guess this is my comment. So if you look at ESSER, we're losing $2,279,758, so that's a minus. And then we're losing $3 million from the governor, so that's a minus. So that equals, we're in a deficit by $5,279,758. Decrease. Well, that's compared to where we thought we were gonna be, we're minus. With what we're hoping to do with our budget this year, we're gonna have we're $5 million short. Okay. And then if you take out the $1,562,158 for the special ed that we're short, we're actually gonna be short this year $6,841,916. So, and it's funny, we're looking at the savings account because I've been criticized over and over for the last 4 years about how we have so much money. I've been told so many times we have so much money in our savings account, and I'm a saver. So, I never thought we had enough. And I was like, well, no, I was told you only want 2%, and that's like about $3 or $4 million and all that. But just to put it in reality for the public and for us and everybody, we're going to be short $6,841,916. What's that?
To provide levels.
Yeah, to provide just level services, right?
I think we would have been able to add and enhance, but if you were talking about level services, meaning meeting our state mandates, yeah.
I mean, I'm just looking, I just want,
Yeah.
just kind of brass tacks where we're kind of at, just so we know where we're at. So I mean, all of the things that we all talk about that we think we need this year, to start with, just kind of level services, we're $6 million short, and we have $11 million in our savings account. I I'm just simply making a statement, I guess. I'm not looking for an answer. I know that you and I kind of had a conversation at the budget meeting, at our budget conversation, and for the public, I just want public staff, I want everybody to kind of realize where we're looking at, so we're kind of all on the same page when we're looking at our budget this year. That's all. I'm simply making a statement. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Awesome job.
Thank you. I have no additional questions.
Kathy, just quickly.
Sure.
To Mike's point, I just wanted to ask, what's the pathway in terms of legislative support from the Senate and the House of Representatives in terms of recognizing, not just in terms of the governor's budget, excuse me, but I thought you did a good job, Sarah, in terms of explaining how we went from a foundation aid district to a minimum aid district, how it's in relation to the soaring housing prices, in part.
Yep.
So it's a two-part question in terms of, I know that our state legislators are aware of this and, trying to see what support that they can provide for us. But, to Mike, your point in terms of informing the public, the benefits from the soaring housing market are not necessarily going to be gleaned by the families and students in our schools. They're not, in large part, in mass, the beneficiaries of the current real estate market, but now going from a foundation aid budget to a minimum aid budget, they're bearing the brunt of it, as I understand it. So it's a two-part question. First of all, from the Senate and the representatives, them being aware, how does that process take place? Is there advocacy that can take part from the community to, hopefully help alleviate?
Sure. So the House budget will come out probably sometime in April, and then the Senate budget comes out later, can sometimes come out quite late. And there is advocacy that can be done. I have written letters to state senators and representatives to advocate for needs and to point out what the opportunities are in terms of the minimum increase per pupil, funding for a more realistic inflation number given the recent history. And then there is also another advocacy platform around circuit breaker reimbursement not being 75%, but being 90%. So that's another area that that educators have been advocating for in recent times while they put their budgets together for April and then later towards June. And in some years, they have come in and done better. The governor's budget's been the floor, and then the House and Senate have improved upon that, increasing that minimum aid, for example. I don't know if they will, but that would be, sort of an opportunity and the process there. We did have a conversation at the legislative breakfast in sort of an initial pass of the formula. It did appear that minimum local contribution was increasing as a result of increasing property values and in the community. That went up. So our foundation budget went up a little bit, but not as much as we might expect because of that inflation factor being lower than at 1.3%. Minimum local contribution went up 6%. So there is some additional revenue coming in because of property values increasing. I don't think they've soared quite as much as sort of the initial pass that we were thinking in an initial analysis. But because of that revenue, I think there are ways in which the town is trying to continue to support that 5.2% increase, or $86.9 million that was discussed back in October.
No, again, it's just for me, to Mike's point, when you look at Chapter 70 and we go from over $6 million one year to $159,000, that precipitous drop, it's and we're not alone, as you noted, but it's quite a bit to handle.
Jen?
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, it's a lot, but the revenue, every tax dollar, 62 cents on every tax dollar comes to us. So as tax dollars increase on on homes, really, right, real estate, then so too does the contribution to the schools. So it's a cushion. We can never go above 2.5%, of course, but it is a cushion that the schools have relied on, with every year, really, right? So that's a good thing. Does being a gateway city help us at all in our arguments for? It might be something to look into. I mean, I know that they're doing the universal pre-K thing and the other stuff. So that might be an opportunity to find some extra money.
Yep, the urban superintendents, the meeting I was referencing on Friday is with the urban superintendents, and I'll find out some more there. And we are learning a little bit more about the pre-K opportunities. I can share that with you at a future time.
It's very exciting. I love that idea. So thank you.
Peter, anything? No? Okay, thank you so much. All right. Item 6.2, portable classroom update. Sarah.
I can update you briefly about the portables. Mr. Lambros had something unexpected happen, and he's okay, but he cannot be here this evening. In terms of the portables, we're all, I think, really frustrated with the pacing of this. It is something that when Mike was the chairperson back in November, he had asked me to spend some extra attention here and in particular keep the BCIS and High West faculty and staff updated on the pace, not the pace, but the updates with the portables. And it's taking a long time. I have been sending weekly updates and can share with you where we are. There's kind of three things happening simultaneously, which I think has been something of a relief to know that because the site work hadn't been happening as it was going through the permitting process, but there was some final designs being put in place, and locally we were putting our orders together to make sure that there was the appropriate furniture and equipment in the portables. So as of now, there is site work happening at BCIS and at High West. It took some time to get through the permitting process, so that was sort of an initial set of delays. I think in the long run, though, that delay is only going to create a safer and more assurances that we have safe portables on our sites, because the big question was around wind shear, and we've had several big storms lately, and so there was some due diligence happening with the architect and the contractor with the town building department to make sure that the buildings would withstand some high winds. They've been doing site work which involves utilities, in particular electrical most recently. And there's a work order request with, is it Eversource, for electrical at High West. I can see where we are with that because I don't have an update since last week. At the same time, the portables are being built off-site. So that's happening in Georgia, and there is a delivery date scheduled for the week of February 19th. So they've been building them based on the specifications, and we're anticipating their delivery over February break. I have a meeting with Mr. Lambros and the two principals tomorrow to talk more about the next steps in terms of that transition once they're here on site, how we're going to move into them and provide support to faculty and staff. But I do want to hang a sign on what I know is mounting frustration among the faculty and staff. And as you know, having gone to the schools, they're in pretty cramped quarters, which can create some really difficult working environments, learning environments, and like hard feelings, quite frankly, and frustration. So I do want to acknowledge that and hang a sign on it. We've ordered and have been working with procurement to order furniture and materials. And so we're gearing up for what we hope is on-time delivery on February 19th. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but I don't want to be too much of a downer, but I do want to also think about any possible delay that could happen, but I don't have any indication. Right now, the week of February 19th is what we're expecting.
Thank you. That'll be a nice thing for the teachers and the staff to come back to.
Yes,
if
that's
it
the
works.
plan.
Hopefully. Any questions or comments? Thank you for the update. Item 6.3, fiscal year 24 on-call HVAC contract.
I will continue to.
Do you want me to take this one, just because this came out of
Sure.
our meeting?
Sure.
Just to give you, so as I said during our school committee comments, our facilities meeting, we kind of looked at the personnel and different plumbers and electricians and kind of all of them, and there's a real shortage. There's a shortage with the town. Try calling a plumber, electrician, or HVAC to your house. It takes months to get them there. So Mike and Kevin kind of said that they were what they're doing to kind of help with the problem is to go to on-call. So like they're gonna so right now this is for a contract for an on-call HVAC. So they're gonna do an on-call with a company. So when there's HVAC, they can, if our own person is busy, they can call that company to kind of come in and do it. And the fact that it's on call, it's just gonna make it a little bit cheaper and a little bit, you're just not calling around to try to see who's available. We're gonna be one of their customers. So this is, just for Kevin and Mike and Kevin, they've been doing this actually. They kind of gave us an update on it, but they've actually been doing this looking into this and kind of implementing this. This didn't come out of our facility meeting. This was already in the work, so just so happens to be coming up.
All right. Questions or comments? Jen?
And this is are we sharing this contract with the town? Is
Yeah,
that
we had
right?
asked that. Is this
Yeah.
going to be shared with the town? This is for us. So one of the other things we kind of talked about is because the town is having the same problems, everybody is. So maybe we could get a better deal if we were like the whole town of Barnstable
Yeah, we should
getting these
definitely look into
contracts
that.
versus just the school department. So yeah, maybe, I don't know if this is the same company that the town is using or.
I had a meeting with Mark Ells last week, and we talked about that very thing, and he's completely amenable to it, so I think
Yeah.
we should double-click on it.
Yeah, Sarah, do you mind just kind of,
Jane?
yep, go ahead.
So the way it's presented now, so it went out to bid, it was accepted. So the first year is a 6-month, it's from now till the end of the school year. So that and it's a cap of 50,000. We have an option for year 2 and year 3. So if the town gets together with us. and
Okay,
we
so
can
yeah,
work something else, we
do this for
can.
now, just so we have somebody and then.
We need the stopgap for the end of
Yep.
the year.
Yep.
And again, it's a $50,000 cap. But going forward, there's nothing to prevent us
Well, I don't
from,
know why we
you
wouldn't.
know,
It's just a bigger.
negotiating with
Yeah.
a larger
Okay.
amount.
All right. Any other questions? All right, Mike?
I'll move to approve the school on-call HVAC contract to Air Masters, a division of the Rise Group, Inc., not to exceed $50,000 for the initial contract term and give authority to the superintendent to sign the contract.
I'll second.
There's a motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Item 6.4, approve one full-time equivalent custodial floater position.
Thank you. So this is a request from the Facilities Department for an additional custodian. By contract, we are able to have 2 floaters, which would not be assigned to any particular school, but would float around as needed. This particular floater would probably be needed the most at the high school, but we would have the opportunity, if we needed to move the person to another building. We would propose, so it's an additional position. In terms of funding it, we see it as something of a cost saver. Right now, we're expending additional funds related to custodial overtime in pretty high numbers. And so to have a floater that can go around and fill different shifts would actually be cost beneficial. And so would come out of the facilities department budget and would request your approval.
Questions?
Move to approve one FTE custodial floater position as presented in tonight's material.
I'll second.
Having a motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 6.5, approval of fiscal year '24 grants, gifts, and donations. These were in your packet.
Move to approve FY24 grants, gifts, and donations as outlined in tonight's material.
Second.
Having a motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries unanimously. Budget transfer authorizations, these were included in your packets.
Move to approve accounts payable warrant FY24 warrant number 32 in the amount of
Wait, budget transfers.
Oh, what am I doing? Oh, I'm sorry. Move to approve budget transfers as outlined in tonight's materials.
Second.
Having a motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries unanimously. Item 6.7, approve accounts payable warrant, fiscal year '24 warrant number 32.
Move to approve accounts payable warrant FY24 warrant number 32 in the amount of $358,411.70.
I'll second.
A motion and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
And I am opposed. Motion carries. Item 7, executive session. Item 7 is an executive session to approve the school committee executive session minutes of January 10th, 2024, a strategy session in preparation of negotiations with non-unit personnel or contract negotiations, and with non-unit personnel, Kristen Harmon, to discuss strategy in preparation for the negotiations with the Barnstable Administrators Organization, and to discuss strategy in preparation for negotiations with the Barnstable Teachers Association. I move to go into executive session, not to reconvene, to approve the school committee executive session minutes of January 10, 2024, to conduct a strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-unit personnel and/or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Kristen Harmon, to discuss strategy and preparation for negotiations with the Barnstable Administrators Organization, and to discuss strategy and preparation for the negotiation with the Barnstable Teachers Association.
I'll second.
Oh, there you go.
Having a motion and seconded, this is a roll call vote. Jen? Peter?
Yes.
Andre?
Yes.
Mike? And I vote yes. Motion carries. Meeting is ended.